did look at you, but it was in a pleasant kind of.
Yeah, I did catch when I reviewed the materials last night. We didn't have in my script the Regions Award, but it's minor. All right, we're ready to roll.
Yes, sir.
Let me call the December quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Board of Regents to order, and as part of that, extend apologies, although I think everyone knows why we were a little late in getting here. I do commend our pilot who brought us in. He noticed as he was pulling the plane out that there had been a plane that had run off the runway where he was leaving from, and he took things as any great TBR employee would do by the hands and went to the assistance of the individual, and then the FAA shut down the airport a little later. But the good news is the other pilot that was involved was not critically harmed or in any major distress. But the sad part is it delayed us in getting here, but we are here, and I appreciate all of you being here and accommodating our moving the meeting back 30 minutes in the start time. I do want to, as part of the opening comments, introduce individual to which I'm quite sure many of you have already met during the wait for the meeting to start, but we have a new Board of Regents member, Mr. Darrell Freeman. Darrell Freeman Sr. Darrell was appointed by Governor Haslam to complete the term of former Regent Virginia Clark. He is the executive chairman of Zycron, Inc., which is an information technology services solution firm. He is also the co-founder of Reliance Bank and Pinnacle Construction Partners. He is the co-founder, additionally, and chairman of Pinnacle Partners, which provides for a full range of pre-construction planning and construction management services for public and private private sector. Mr. Freeman holds a bachelor's and a master's degree from Middle Tennessee State. He is married. He and his wife, Gloria, have 4 children. We, the members of the Board of Regents, are very glad to have Mr. Freeman join us and look forward to working with him. Darrell Freeman. Thanks. At this time, I'll call on the Chancellor for any opening comments that he might have.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll just say welcome to everybody and assure Regent Freeman, this is the last time that you'll have to be introduced. So, so I'm ready to go.
All right. Do we have media with us? It's my understanding, I think there was an individual from the Nashville City paper is with us today. Appreciate your being with us. In my haste to make it to the front, I was looking around. I did not see any other elected officials who are with us. If there are any, raise your hand and charge it to my head and not my heart if I didn't note you when I came in. Everyone has received a copy of the agenda. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our September 21st, 2012 regular quarterly board meeting. Excuse me. Actually, the first item I need to do is to call on Madam Secretary to call the roll to make sure we have a quorum so that we can officially conduct business.
Regent Copeland. Here. Regent Duckett.
Here.
Regent Ferris will be late. Regent Freeman. Present. Regent Griscom. Here. Regent Humphrey.
Here.
Regent Kisber.
Here.
Regent Markham.
Here.
Regent Montgomery. Here. Regent Raines. Here. Regent Reynolds. Here. Regent Roddy? Here. Regent Thomas?
Here.
Regent Farland? Here. You indeed do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next, we will turn to the approval of the minutes from previous sessions, and first of which is the minutes from the September 21st, 2012 regular quarterly meeting of the Board of Regents, and the minutes from the October 1st as well as the November 27th special called session. Those minutes were provided to the members prior to this meeting. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to either of the sets of minutes that I've made reference to? If not, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Regent Griscom, second by Regent Thomas. Once again, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Opposes, same sign. The minutes have been approved. Next item is the report on interim action. Since our last meeting, I will call on Chancellor Morgan to give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report of interim action, I believe, has been included in your board materials for your review that had been forwarded to you a few days ago. As usual, the report outlines the business transacted by our office since the last quarterly meeting of the board. I believe it is fair to say that everything that's covered in the interim action report this time are the typical kinds of transactions that you see each quarter. Having said that, then, I would recommend the board approve the report of interim action.
Members of the Regent, you have heard the recommendation from the Chancellor that the interim actions be approved. Is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Motion made by Regent Markham. Is there a second? Second by Regent Kisper. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a matter that requires a voice vote. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes, the same sign. Motion is approved. We now move to reports of the committee. The Audit Committee is the only committee that actually has met since our last quarterly meeting. You have the minutes from the November 20th Audit Committee meeting. Is there a motion to accept those minutes? Motion by Regent Griscom. Is there a second? Second by Regent Copeland. Any discussion on that item? Hearing none, this is an item also that requires a voice vote. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes, the same sign. Motion is approved. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the report of the Regents Awards and Excellence in Philanthropy. I will call on Regent Reynolds to make that presentation.
Thank you very much. Today we have 2 Regents Awards for Excellence in Philanthropy, and these are always a pleasure to present. The first is a presentation that was made in May when East Tennessee State University recognized the philanthropic support of Dr. Jack Nelson and Dr. Diane Nelson. The second award, the presentation occurred late July of this year and honored Mr. Morgan Morton, again for his support at the University of Memphis. Doctors Jack and Diane Nelson were nominated by our now President Emeritus Paul Stanton of East Tennessee State University. Known as outstanding philanthropists, the Nelsons' philanthropic leadership has encompassed their wide-ranging interest at East Tennessee State University. They've been recognized by the President's Trust Platinum Society for a lifetime of support in excess of $1 million to ETSU. They're also part of the university's Legacy Circle for their very forward-looking stewardship in their estate plans. Dr. Diane Nelson was a professor at East Tennessee State University. She began her service on the faculty in 1968 in biological sciences. She's a renowned marine biologist around the world, and many alumni, faculty, and staff know and appreciate her, whether it's in her role as professor, research, artist, mentor, colleague, or simply great friend. Dr. Jack Nelson is a chemical engineer, and he retired after a very distinguished career at Kingsport's Eastman Chemical Company. Their respective backgrounds and interests have led them to advance not only the university's impressive science fields, but also to encourage the development of new endeavors and other critical needs at ETSU. So speaking on behalf of the Board of Regents, it's wonderful to have this opportunity to acknowledge the Nelsons' contributions and their commitments to ETSU. At this time, I'd like to ask the president of ETSU, Dr. Brian Nolan, to come forward and offer comments as well.
Thank you and good afternoon. Truly honored to represent the institution in our acknowledgement of the contributions of Dr. Jack Nelson and Dr. Diane Nelson, two individuals who love ETSU, who cherish ETSU, and have been part of the family for the better part of 40 years. Dr. Nelson was a longtime faculty member, someone who is known across the institution not only as an outstanding teacher, but an outstanding researcher, but someone who loves marine biology. In fact, they are on a trip as we speak, exploring not only that vocation, but avocation. Had the wonderful pleasure to sit with them at our Foundation Award this spring. Two wonderful individuals, two colorful individuals, but two individuals who, through their service, will create opportunities for expanded fellowship, scholarship, and service at ETSU. We're grateful to the board for your recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Oh, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please continue.
And we have a second award today, as I mentioned earlier. This was presented to Morgan Morton, who was nominated by Dr. Shirley Raines at the University of Memphis. Since 1969, once again over 40 years, Dr. Morton has been a committed supporter to the University of Memphis, and in particular, its Fogelman College of Business and Economics. His cumulative commitments to the university to date exceeds $800,000. In 2002, now about a decade ago, Mr. Morton established the Morgan Morton Family Scholarship. It's awarded each year to 4 full-time undergraduate students from his hometown of Collierville, Tennessee. President Raines wanted to nominate Mr. Morton to recognize this lifetime member of the University of Memphis Alumni Association. He was also the 2011 recipient of the Business College's Outstanding Alumnus of the Year Award. In fact, the dean of the Business College described him as a true philanthropist. Dean Grover said, "What is so inspiring about Morgan's support is that he doesn't just stop after making a gift. He continues to give his time, both by mentoring our students and volunteering on our committees. His passion, commitment, and selflessness have truly made a difference to the University of Memphis and to the Fogelman College of Business, and will continue to make a difference for many years to come." So once again, speaking on behalf of the Board of Regents, we're grateful for this opportunity to honor Mr. Morgan Morton. And in turn, I would also like to ask President Raines to step forward and offer comments as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's particularly fitting that Morgan is the person who's recognized. His mother was a teacher, and because he lost his father young, she supported the family and made sure all of them went to college. That's why he's so connected to Collierville, Tennessee, and that community, because he felt the schools prepared him well to be a college student, and his mother supported him in his endeavor. He went on to become an executive with Merck and traveled the world and was stationed in many places. When he retired, he said he wanted to give back to the institutions that had meant the most to him, to Collierville, Tennessee, and to the University of Memphis. So not only does he award the scholarships, he meets with those 4 recipients on a regular basis to mentor them in both their studies and in their career choices, as well as just life. So he fits what you would want to have as someone who's recognized by the Tennessee Board of Regents for the Regents Award. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Morgan.
Thank you, Dr. Raines. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report of two outstanding individuals whose lives in support of our TBR institutions we should all emulate. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Reynolds. We appreciate that, and we sincerely appreciate the work that these individuals have done on behalf of the respective institutions. Next on the agenda is the report of the Chancellor, and at this time I will call on Chancellor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In keeping with past practice, my report will be very brief, and I will turn it over in just a moment to Wendy Thompson to really talk to us about delivery activities and some things that we think you'll be quite interested in today. But before I do have a couple of things I want to talk about, but before I do it, I'd like to recognize Carl Height, who has just come back from SACS. The meeting of the Southern Association was in Dallas, and has some kind of a report to make about that affects some of our folks here at the TBR.
You remember SACS is here to help you. So I do want to share with you there are some Tennesseans playing a major role in what's happening on the commission. I recognize some continuous membership on the commission as well as new members from our sister institutions. Dr. Mary Lou Apple has received a sentence for a number of
Sentence.
for 3 more years on the commission. Dr. Ryan Nolan will be coming to the commission for his first term. And Judy Gooch has been appointed as the Republican representative from Tennessee. So we've done very well. I don't know why they made the following decision, but I am now the vice chair.
Public representative. Public. You said another word.
Republican they are not.
That's right.
For some reason, I will serve as the vice chair of the executive council of the commission. So it's been a good run for Tennessee.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Carl. It is good when we have folks involved from Tennessee in a very significant role with SACS and other national organizations, but it is indeed to our benefit, and we thank you for the sacrifice you make, Mary Lou and Brian and Carl, to continue to play that very important role. I was going to talk a little bit about the budget, but I think David is going to cover that. It's better news than it has been in the last several years, so I'll let him share with you kind of where we are, at least at this point, in terms of budget recommendations that the Higher Education Commission has made to the governor. But I would like to talk about 2 things. One is Dr. Melton, who you will remember, Robbie Melton from our Southwest, from the meeting at Southwest, I guess two meetings ago, talking about technology and mobile technology and how we are employing mobile technology in a variety of ways across our system. And in fact, we call ourselves a mobilized system, and that has more meaning for me today than it did back when we were at Southwest. But Dr. Melton, Wendy Thompson, and I, along with Wade McCamey and a group from Walter State, were able to go last week and spend a day in Cupertino, California, at Apple headquarters for what they call an executive briefing. We met with folks from Apple in Cupertino that are engaged in our higher education area, but also the folks who work in this region on behalf of Apple in higher education. And it was just really a great opportunity to exchange information. I mean, part of it was a marketing pitch. I mean, they wanted to show us what they had and encourage us to continue to look to Apple for technology solutions in various ways. But it was really interesting. They were also very interested in what we had to tell them about what we're doing, about what we see in terms of the future, of the things particularly that they need to be doing that would really help us in terms of how we apply technology and use mobile technology in our various facets of our higher education programming. And I'll tell you, it made me just personally proud to be there with Dr. McCamey and the folks from Walter State. Because, we talk about being on the cutting edge and that we're out there and we're doing all these great and exciting things. But there is no doubt but when it comes to using mobile technology, we are, as a system, on the cutting edge. Walter State is on the cutting edge in terms of institutions in Tennessee. It was really fascinating to watch the folks from Apple who are in this business, as you could kind of see things clicking in their heads as the folks from Walter State were talking about what they do, how they do it, and what they see, what their vision is for the next thing. It was really a very beneficial visit, I think, and beneficial enough to where a lot of what we heard, I think the board might very well benefit from hearing some of those presentations. Which leads me to the second thing that I will mention to you, and that is we have on your calendars, hopefully, we have on your calendars reserved for the Wednesday afternoon, evening, and Thursday before the March board meeting, a retreat, a board retreat. I guess March 2 years ago, we did the kind of the first ever, at least the first in recent memory, board retreat for the Board of Regents members, and we plan on doing that same thing this next March. Couple of areas that I think would be useful for us to focus on. One very much is about technology, and not just technology as we use it in classrooms and on campuses, but also the kind of the global changes that are taking place. All of us have heard a lot of conversation about massive open online courses, so-called MOOCs. Lots of different innovations that are being discussed, some of which are truly innovative, some of which, as we learned at Apple last week, are simply substituting one technology for another, but doesn't necessarily really fundamentally change anything. But to understand, and perhaps to get somebody to come in and help us understand some vision of the future, of what does this mean? What does this mean for our system, for our institutions? How can we begin to position ourselves effectively in order to thrive in what this yet to be determined environment is likely to be? So kind of a futurist view of higher education and how it can inform us as to what we need to be thinking about today in terms of what's likely to happen tomorrow. That's one area. And maybe getting somebody from Apple to help us. Particularly, there was a conversation around attributes of the folks that Apple looks for when they're out hiring that I found to be a fascinating conversation that I think we could potentially benefit from as a group. Secondly is the area of finance. I think I've shared with y'all before that one of the concerns that I have is that we tend to talk about financial issues in isolation from issues that really are interrelated. We'll talk about tuition, we'll talk about state appropriation budgets, we'll talk about financial aid programs, federal aid programs, philanthropy and money raising, as well as talking about efficiencies that we ought to expect our institutions to achieve. But never do we talk about that really at the same time, so that we can begin to really understand strategically what is likely to be required for us to successfully finance our aspirations as we go forward. So that's another area where I think it would be beneficial for us to spend some time together talking about and thinking about. But particularly I'm interested in hearing from y'all as to what you see maybe some of that time should be spent doing. So we'll be reaching out to you here over the next few days and soliciting from you your ideas about things that you think would be beneficial for us to spend some time kind of away from the day-to-day grind of the business of the board and your individual and personal obligations, but to really think together about those issues that are important for us to do the best job we can as a Board of Regents and serving the state of Tennessee. So be thinking about that, because we'll be reaching out to you to try to solicit your input. Our plan right now is for the retreat to be in Nashville, in the Nashville area, probably going to be out around Cool Springs somewhere, is our expectation right now. We're talking with potential sites right now, trying to lock down a space, and that is Wednesday evening, March 27th, and Thursday, March 28th. The board then will meet on the Friday morning, March 29th, I think is correct. Okay, I think that's great. If it's not, I'm sure somebody will correct me here pretty quickly. With that, I would recognize Wendy Thompson to come and give us some completion update. And I think you'll find, I hope at least you find this interesting.
Thank
Wendy?
you, Chancellor Morgan, and good afternoon. As you recall, at the September board meeting, we presented you with a list of strategies that we think will be significant contributors to our overall completion agenda. And today, Dr. Ellen Weed is going to give you some information on it. One important initiative that we have underway as a part of our structured learning community strategy. But before you hear from Dr. Weed, you're going to hear from Dr. Warren Nichols. We want to respond to some questions that you've raised during our previous discussions. One question that came up during our discussion of the Access to Success initiative was whether having an associate degree makes you more likely to complete a bachelor's degree program. And our research department has done some extensive work in this area, and Dr. Nichols is going to share some of those findings with you. So first you'll hear from Dr. Nichols and then from Ellen Weed.
And good afternoon. And this obviously is very exciting for us. Hopefully very enlightening and interesting to you. And it will, I am confident it will be of absolutely no surprise to our community college presidents and its faculty and staff. But based upon what Wendy was mentioning a moment ago, questions that were specifically asked, Regent Griscom, was students who get a 2-year degree or complete a significant amount of community college credit, when they transfer to a university, how do they perform? How do they do? And so again, what we're doing is we are using data from the 2005-2011. We looked at full-time students, and we looked at where they were after 7 years at a Tennessee Board of Regents public system. I would also remind you, as we look at these numbers, these 2005-2011 students are prior to the creation of the Complete College Tennessee Act, prior to the completion of the Tennessee Transfer Pathways, prior to everything we've done with the remedial learning development initiatives. So this is where we were prior to the CCTA. So what did we compare? We compared native students that began at a bachelor's university degree granting institution. We looked at students who have transferred to those bachelor's institutions from a community college who had earned an associate's degree before transferring. And then we also looked at students who transferred to a bachelor's degree granting institution from a community college before they entered an associate, or before they completed an associate's degree. So here's what we found. First chart you're looking at is looking at students that are what we call native students. They started at the university and completed all of their work at the university. What you will find is that 44% of the students who started at a bachelor degree granting university institution completed their bachelor's degree within 6 years. You're looking at 12% who are still enrolled in their 7th year. So you are looking at a group of students who either have completed or are continuing to work towards that bachelor's degree. Then in the blue, you're seeing 44% of the students who, for some reason, are no longer enrolled at that university. Now, that could mean that they have stopped out, but they will come back. It certainly could mean that they transferred to another university in another a private university within Tennessee or somewhere else. We just don't know. Those are law students. We really don't know what happened to that 44%. If you look at the next slide, you will see, now this is students who started at a community college, received a 2-year degree, and then transferred to a university, a public university. 57% of those students who completed a 2-year degree at a community college attained a bachelor's degree within the 6 years. You will also see that 16% of those students are still enrolled in the 7th year at a university. 27% of those students are no longer enrolled for whatever reason that they may be at a university. Next slide looks at students who completed a significant portion of their coursework at a community college but did not receive the degree. But when they transferred to a university, 39% have completed the bachelor's degree. 21% are still enrolled and working on that bachelor's degree. 40% are no longer enrolled at one of our public universities in Tennessee. Looking at it in a composite nature, where you can actually see it head to head, what you see is 56% of students who start at a university will have completed a bachelor's degree within the 6th year or are continuing to be enrolled during that 7th year, 56%. If you look at the students who started and completed a 2-year degree and then transferred to a university, you're seeing a 73% success rate. 73% have either completed the bachelor's degree within 6 years or are still enrolled and working towards that degree at the end of the 7th year. And then for those students who didn't complete all of the community college work but still transferred, 60% have either completed that bachelor's degree or are still working on completing that bachelor's degree. Where does that ultimately leave us? We believe that, and again, as a reminder, this was before we started with our new emphasis under the Completion Academy, under the Complete College Tennessee Act. Where are we now? We truly believe that what you're seeing is those students who have transferred. Will they continue to be successful? We believe that the students will continue to be and even have a greater likelihood of succeeding at the university. And just some of the reasons are we now have the Tennessee transfer pathways. Think about it. A student who starts at a community college, completes 2 years, transfers, is automatically guaranteed to start at that university as a junior. Most of these students probably had to repeat some coursework. So they will have even a quicker opportunity to succeed than they have in years past. Additionally, under our Access to Success and what we've done with the developmental redesign will even better prepare our students for that university transfer work. And then lastly, under the structured learning communities, which Ellen Weed is going to discuss with you now, we'll take that to even greater nature. So thank you for the opportunity. Yes, sir, Regent.
Dr. Nichol, you may not have this, but if you look at that number of completion.
Yes, sir.
The 44%, 6 years, do we have any data that says of that number, how many of them finished in less than 6 years? Since that's where we're tracking now, is trying to get people in and out. So of that 44%, do we have a feel for how many of those would have met a 4-year type path and have gotten a degree?
I'm going to defer that question to Vice Chancellor Wendy, because Wendy and Greg are the ones that pull these numbers together. I think that's an excellent question, and we will if we have that, we will get that information to you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One other question for you. I imagine a pretty high percent of the students are what would traditionally be called non-traditional students.
Yes.
That are working and not necessarily going full-time.
Yes, sir.
But part-time in community college. And that's very impressive, in fact, that they start as a junior, in a university. But my other question was, to what degree are we getting this information out, in terms of marketing or getting it to guidance counselors so that they understand the benefit of this as you graduate from a community college within 2 years, in a shorter term, going in as a junior, you can complete a university and a BS degree. And the incentive is you save a lot of money.
Yes, sir. To answer your question, what are we doing to get this information out? There is some national, it's just really coincidental that there's some national information from community colleges that is reflecting this exact same thing that has made some major press. But specifically to your question, sir, through our new communications marketing person for the community colleges, Ms. Virginia Moreland, and through Monica Greppa-Watts' office, and certainly through our office, we will be sending this to our campuses just as soon as the day is out, so that they can have this information, so that they can work at it with their businesses and industry, with their chambers of commerce, with their groups, and then we'll be working to get this information out as well. But again, that also points out, sir, that the fact that this was only looking at full-time freshmen, understanding that the majority of our students are not full-time but part-time, we will continue to drive and dig deeper to establish exactly how this works for our part-time students as well. But it's also going to be impressive, I assure you, when we get it. But we are going to make sure that this word gets out, especially as it relates to the parents trying to decide where to send their child. Again, with the Tennessee transfer pathways, with the lower cost, with the lower student to pupil ratio or teacher to pupil ratio, there's no reason why the majority of our students should not be getting at the community college.
And it would be interesting to also actually have the costs.
Yes, sir.
So that you could compare both avenues.
Yes, sir. We'll have it. Yes, sir.
What are they doing at the community college level that's having their students become more successful in obtaining a BS degree over a student going to a university for a four-year degree? I mean, what's going on there?
Yes, sir. Well, I will only speak to the community college, and I'll let the universities speak for themselves. And I don't. And to my colleagues that are university presidents, please, I want them to understand, and I think they do, that this was not in any attempt to try to showcase one is better than the other, or one is doing better than the other. It's just that we were specifically asked to make a report on this, and this is what we have done. During this time, sir, during the time of this action, the things that community colleges were doing and have done forever is, again, the average community college teacher to student ratio in our classrooms is give or take somewhere between 17 to 22 students in a classroom. The other thing is that on all of our colleges, every one of our community college faculty, whether they're full-time or part-time, are there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to interact and relate with our students, to teach. We're not into research. Some of our college faculty do research, but that's not their primary mission. Everything we do is focusing on working with those students and helping them succeed. Much of this you see is on a cohort based, similar to what the TTCs have been doing for years. If you think about what we do on our workforce programs, think about our nursing programs, our allied health programs. They have always been based on that structured learning environment, the cohort based. So we know that system works as well, so we work there well. So we've always been doing those things. Now what we're doing in addition to that, sir, is that we, under the Complete College Act, under the Unified Community College System, under all of the initiatives that have occurred over the last 2 or 3, 4 years, we are taking even a more directed approach to those students who are coming to us that are not academically prepared. Where in years past, those students came to us, our retention and success rate with those students was nothing to be proud of. But we have totally recreated and reformatted and implemented new strategies and ideas where it's more of a high touch with every one of our students, that we anticipate these numbers to even be better.
So are you all talking to each other, the university presidents and the community college presidents?
Absolutely.
To see if you can mimic that environment at the university level so that we can have higher graduation rates?
Yes, sir. And again, this is where with that Tennessee Transfer Pathways, among other things, comes in, where a student now, regardless of whether they start at community college or which community college, there's a state of Tennessee guarantee that a student who starts at a community college, completes a certain course of action programs, when they graduate, will be accepted into one of our universities. Now, that would not have happened if there had not been our faculty, both at the universities and the community colleges, involved in those conversations.
Yes, I understand the pathways. I'm asking, is there any way to mimic your environment or a piece of your environment at the university level so that we can have the same or higher graduation rates at the university level?
I would expect so, yes, sir. I would expect so.
And one thing it's important to Regent Freeman to understand is this is looking at those students who have completed an associate degree or have completed a significant portion of the work toward associate degree. Yeah, this is not the graduation rates from a two-year school. So these are, of those who are successful at the two-year school, it is a strong indicator of their ultimate success at a four-year school. But the numbers are considerably different if you look at the students who started at a two-year school who don't finish. So it's really looking. So part of the answer is, I think, is that these are students who have demonstrated the ability to start and finish something, and that they have the motivation. So the message for our four-year schools, and this is a discussion that is in fact ongoing right now, is there's an understanding of the value of our four-year schools reaching into the community colleges to really encourage those transfers of associate degree recipients into the universities, because they're a good they're a good bet. If you can get them to transfer into your school, they're a good chance that they're going to complete in pretty impressive numbers.
So Chancellor, you're not saying that 44% is the graduation rate at the community college. You're saying of the ones that receive a two-year degree,
57% of them are going to finish their four-year degree within the six-year horizon.
57% of the 44%.
Yes, well, 57% of those who finish the two-year program. And we can supply you with graduation rates, but the graduation rates for first-time, full-time freshmen at community colleges, if you count kind of where not just those who finish in that institution, but those who finish, is in the 20s, 22%, probably on average.
We're not where we
something
need
like
to be
that.
on graduation rates,
So
and appreciate the clarification.
Okay.
We're not trying to.
Yeah, the question we were answering was, is the award of an associate degree a positive indicator for those who will ultimately finish a four-year program? And the answer is yes. I mean, it's a good positive indication. So it's, sure.
One other piece of information I'd love to see, the college, four-year college number is 100%.
Yes.
That's everybody it goes.
Yes.
I'd like to see, if you can provide it at some point, of the second column, those who completed the transfers, what's the percentage of those students that are at the community college? Is that 40% of the student population,
We can get those.
30% or whatever? And then I'd like to see the same thing for the next column. So that way, I think, Darrell, it goes to your question is, I'm glad to see, as I appreciate the information, but I'd like to know that, in just looking at the percentages here, but of those who complete that associate, what's the percentage of students at that, in the community college that fall into that category?
We can do that.
What that is,
Sure.
okay?
We'll be happy to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Just in response to Regent Freeman's question about what we could do to duplicate what we're doing into the community colleges. I think part of, because you're sort of coming in the middle of this conversation, there are a lot of questions, but part of the desire on the part of the state in terms of the community colleges is to be where students are remediated, to get as much as possible the remediation out of the universities, that people who are truly ready to go into a university are placed there, and those that are really need remediation need to be in a community college. So trying to, I think, educate at our high school counselor levels, and then it goes back to trying to make sure high school graduates are ready. But some of the desire, because the cost of remediation is expensive and would be better served to be in a community college. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
So
Yes, ma'am.
in terms of replication, those are things that we're really trying to back up instead of the remediation part. Does that make sense? Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I got one
Thank
more
you.
question.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
What did you say the graduation rate at the community college level was?
First-time, full-time freshman, somebody can help me, but it's
Yeah,
probably, if you count everything, what is 22?
Somewhere in the 22 to 25%.
25% range, something like that.
First-time, full-time freshman.
Right.
And again, that's
that's a-
only about
that's a-
35 to 40% of our student population.
How long has it been 22 to 25%? Is it improving, or do you have plans for improvement?
Well, we certainly have plans for improvement, yes, sir. And I don't mean that facetiously. We have, we are not happy, we are not pleased with that graduation rate.
Or how long has it been where it is?
Probably for, I would dare say, probably for the last 15, 20 years. But that's honestly, it's no excuse, but that's a national average as well. It's not just Tennessee average. We have, again, there are so many factors that underlie that if I sat up here and talked to you about it, it would make it sound like it's excuses, and we're not here to make excuses. We're really not. But when you talk about the fact that over 70 to 80% of the students who begin at a community college are not academically prepared for college, so those factor into our numbers. 70 to 80% of students coming out of high school are not academically prepared to come to college. When you look at the number of people who have been laid off from work after 10, 15 years at a business, who are having to come back to community colleges to get retrained, that are not academically prepared, only because it's been a while since they've had to do math. When you factor all of these students who we are taking, and this is who we are, we love this. We take this person, and then it may take us 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to get them where they want to be. And then when you get to the fact, sir, that many of our college students have no interest in graduation, none. They're there to take a course or two to better themselves at work. When you look at the number of students who are there only to get a one-year certificate so that they can go back out and become in the workforce, all of those are factors that factor into that graduation rate. So when it's just impossible to compare a graduation rate for a community college against a university because our missions are so different and our students are so
I
different.
wasn't making a comparison between community college and university college graduation rates. What I was saying was trying to establish a baseline to say,
Sure.
if it's 22% now, what can we do in the next 5 years to make it 35%?
And under
That's-
the completion of college, under the completion academies, and under the Tennessee Complete College, with what we're doing with remedial learning support, with the different way we're doing that, we do believe, sir, that we can make some significant progress. on
I'll be
that.
watching.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was the point of the Complete College Tennessee Act. Yeah, absolutely.
If there's no other
Thank you.
questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor.
Good afternoon. The Block Scheduling Cohort Initiative is one of those strategies that we hope over time will increase the graduation rate. Its purpose is to encourage our community colleges to offer their degrees and their certificates on a highly structured, fixed schedule, rather than allowing students to build their own schedule. There is increasing evidence, not only in Tennessee but nationally, that students who enroll in a structured program, rather than simply choosing their own schedule, are more likely to graduate, to succeed in their program. Most allied, as Dr. Nichols mentioned, most allied health programs already are offered as structured programs, and that's the student's only option. In addition, that's how the Tennessee Technology Centers deliver their programs. And in fact, it is largely because of the success of our Tennessee Technology Centers that Complete College America is now pushing the structured program as an alternative for community colleges. So what's distinct about a structured learner community, or an SLC, structured learning community? First of all, the student has limited choice. In a lot of ways, that seems counterintuitive, but there is growing evidence that students do better in terms of completing their degree when you limit their choices. The college student in a traditional pathway, I go to a college, I choose a major, someone hands me a list of required courses. This is how most of us do it. And then I go out and I build a schedule, taking the courses on the days and times that are convenient to me and that they're offered. An SLC student, on the other hand, is handed a completion schedule at the time they enter the institution. And that completion schedule gives me a list of the courses I'm going to take, semester, or I should take, semester by semester until I graduate. Often those completion schedules will even include days and times. Occasionally, the college will even automatically enroll me in those classes, and I have to do something different to choose a different schedule. So the student is then guaranteed that the courses on that completion schedule will be offered during the semesters that schedule says they'll be offered. So what are the advantages of structured learning communities? First of all, the SLC shifts the student's focus to the program instead of on courses. It's one thing for me to decide as a student that, you know, I think for spring semester I'll take Intro to Business and Economics and Speech if I can get a schedule on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's another thing for the college to tell me, this is your schedule for spring semester, and these are the courses you're going to take, and these are the days. Secondly, students have a very clear plan for completion. So my plan is not just focused on what am I going to do this semester, or do I want to sit out a semester? I can predict when I will complete the entire program. A completion plan, I think, signals to the student that the college expects me to finish the program. It's assumed I'm going to finish the program, not just the semester. And the students who don't stick to that schedule are going to be out of sequence, and they're going to be behind their classmates. The schedule is often designed, the SLC schedule is often designed to accelerate completion because colleges will often add a course to the completion plans, pushing students, nudging students to be as close to full-time as possible. This could save the student time and money, as came up when Dr. Nichols was talking. Especially since in our system, credit hours above 12 cost less than credit hours below 12. So if I take 15 or more credit hours every semester, I not only complete faster, but I save money. We have one SLC in Tennessee that offers an AAS degree in 2 semesters rather than 2 years. Those students are in school all the time for those 2 semesters. But they save $2,800 by completing that program in 1 year rather than 2. And the money saved wasn't something that we marketed. The students figured it out. Now we're marketing it, but it's something that the students figured out. In their publication, Time is the Enemy, Complete College America argues that anything we can do to shorten the time that a student is on campus or is enrolled will increase their chances of completing a degree. And an SLC tries to do that by nudging students to take more courses. A recent report from the National Student Clearinghouse found a graduation rate of 18%, 18%, for students who start in a two-year college and always enroll part-time. The graduation rate was 53% for students who start in a two-year college and always enroll full-time. That's a difference between 18 and 53%. So students are more likely to graduate in a structured learning community. The TTCs, most community college health science programs, which are offered as structured, and most private two-year college programs, which are offered as structured, have higher completion rates. You'll see that for our TTCs, the completion rate is 79%. For the TBR, community college health science programs, it's 70%. For Tennessee's private two-year colleges, it's 62%. For our community college as a whole, it's 36%. In 2010, Dr. Short received $875,000 from the Lumina Foundation to encourage TBR community colleges to offer structured learning communities in areas outside the health sciences, because we already had them in health sciences. So what have we done with those Lumina funds? We've developed 3 system-wide certificates in general education. One that includes the general education prerequisites for nursing in most health science programs. That's a 23-hour certificate. One that includes the general ed requirements for the AAS, the career degrees. And that's a 15 to 16-hour certificate, so it can be completed in one semester. And one for the 41-hour general education core. That is system-wide and that most of you know about. Now, the 41-hour core certificate seemed like a good idea to us when we established it as a motivator for students. If you will just finish these 41 hours, you'll complete your core, you're guaranteed it will all be accepted at any university, and we'll give you a certificate. You will have completed a credential. In light of some recent evidence about the impact of completing the core that Dr. Clark is going to share with you in a few minutes, that general education core makes us look like geniuses. So you will learn more about that. We have also used Lumina funds to develop career SLCs in the business and education areas. So what has happened? The first Lumina-supported SLCs began in fall 2011. In fall 2011, our community colleges offered 42 Lumina SLCs. This fall, they are offering 63, 42 to 63. In fall 2011, the Lumina SLCs had an enrollment of 1,084 compared to current 2,738. And most impressively, these are preliminary data, but they are very encouraging. Based on the data we have, 75% of the students who enrolled in those Lumina SLCs in fall 2011 have either graduated or they are still enrolled. And that 75% compares to a comparable rate of 50% for TBR community college students who are not in a Lumina SLC. What are the challenges to success? First, informing students, just getting the information to students. We are working on a branding and promotion campaign. We're using some Lumina funds to initiate a Finish Faster campaign that will be launched in February of 2013. Our campuses are trying to get the word out. You need to get this information to students at the point of admissions. The problem is now that most of our students apply for admission online. They don't come to campus, so it's very hard to get them at the time when we really need to contact them. But our campuses are doing creative things. Columbia State, for example, has a Team Tuesday SLC where you only have to come to campus on Tuesday. You come on Tuesdays for a long time, but only on Tuesdays. At Pellissippi, they have an ahead and they have a video that shows you, here are the advantages of these programs, and other campuses are doing similar things. The second challenge is convincing students, once they know about an SLC, they are very reluctant, especially adult students, to commit to the SLC option. Why? Because it is hard for them to commit to the long-term gain. I mean, telling them you're more likely to graduate if you do this is somewhat convincing, but when they know that that means in the short term, I'm going to have to enroll in more courses, there's going to be more effort, it's going to take a lot more of a time, that's a hard sell. That's a hard decision for a student to make. It's hard when that student is juggling family, job, and financial conflicts. And those are the biggest reasons that our adult students drop out. It is hard because it reverses. To me, the word is flip-flops. It really stands on its head what the community colleges have traditionally emphasized. Traditionally, we have emphasized we are the institutions of access and convenience. And now, all of a sudden, we're saying to students, inconvenience yourself. Enroll in more hours. I mean, the faculty at community colleges are used to encouraging students to take, especially adult students, take fewer hours, not more. If you're going to have to work part-time, don't enroll full-time. But now what we're saying is if there's any way you can do it, enroll full-time or enroll for as many courses as you possibly can. That's a hard sell. And one of the third challenges is reallocating funds. For the college, starting SLCs means reallocating funds from other uses. The SLCs are more expensive to launch. Classes are typically smaller. The required advising is more intensive, and it's a personnel intensive program. Now, if it works, in a couple of years, there's a good return on investment for the community college. But at the outset, there is not a good initial return on investment for our colleges. So the effectiveness of the SLCs will not really be apparent for at least 2 years, probably longer. There are some strategies that will make our SLCs more successful or will result in more SLCs. First, further reduce the options available to students. Make SLCs the only way to complete that program. That's what the health sciences do. If I want to be a physical therapy assistant, I have to go into an SLC. If I want to be a nurse, the SLC is the only option available to me. That's not true in most of our other programs. So make it the only program, or at least the default option. So the student has to opt out of the SLC into a different program. Secondly, we can schedule that 41-hour core and now our Tennessee transfer pathways as SLCs because they have common courses. Right now, less than 40% of TBR community college students who do transfer have completed the Gen Ed core, or have completed, I don't know if they've completed the core, have completed 41 hours, and less than 25% of them have completed their associate's degree at the time they transfer to the university. SLCs might help us increase those rates. Another promising strategy is to place students into an SLC program as early as possible, the first semester, if at all possible. Research that Davis Jenkins has done found that early program enterers in the community colleges had a graduation rate of 50% compared to 31% for the entire cohort. Fourth, we can include more hybrid courses, use more online courses, especially hybrids, in our SLCs because that can reduce the number of hours that a student has to actually spend on campus and make it easier for them to enroll in additional hours. And there is growing evidence that the hybrid completion rate is better than the asynchronous online course completion rate. And lastly, we could try to identify some incentives for students and for our campuses. For example, some places, some schools offer scholarships to students when they're nearing the end of their program, not the beginning of their program. So they are to incentivize completion rather than initial enrollment. In Virginia, if I transfer to a university with the associate's degree, from a community college with an associate's degree, and a grade point average of 3.0 or higher, I receive a $1,000 scholarship per year for 2 years at a Virginia State University. The Western Governors University also offers $2,000 scholarships to associate degree completers who enroll in their institution. So we might look at some incentives such as that. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions of Dr. Reed? Weed, excuse me. Thank you, Doctor. Yes.
Can you go back to the slide where it shows SLC is initiated with Lumina, the Lumina Foundation?
It's 3 certificates.
It says fall 2012 offerings of 63 SLCs. Can you tell, what does that mean, 63 SLCs?
We have 13 community colleges.
Yes.
And among those 13, I just added up, there are 63 programs being offered now by all 13 colleges. I mean, for example, there might be 5 of those colleges that are offering a structured learning community in business.
Okay.
There might be only one, it is duplicative.
So if I'm a business student, I can roll into the SLC program, and the graduation rates for the kids who enter into those are higher than kids that do not enter into that program. Is that what you're saying?
After 1 year, they are. Let's hope it lasts.
Okay.
But that's correct. And business is one of the areas where
Okay.
SLCs are popular.
So when you say the fall 2012 SLC enrollment is 2,738, you're saying 2,738 students have enrolled in those programs?
Correct.
In one of the SLCs that's
Right.
related to Lumina.
Okay, so how many students are available to enroll in an SLC program? And then my second question is, if this is a good model, how do you roll it out so that we can improve the graduation rates? I mean, is this something you can only do for a small number of students, or is there a possibility of this being rolled out and having more students participate in it?
In my opinion, we can certainly grow it, and we are trying. I think everyone agrees with that. Will it be the appropriate program for all of our community college students, 92,000 of them? No. I don't know what the magic percent is. Now, if you look at those in all SLCs, including health sciences, those aren't included here, it's currently about 9% of our total enrollment. Okay. We can certainly grow that. And that's what we're trying to do. I'll be honest, the biggest resistance we're finding is not our campuses, it's our students.
Okay.
And that's why we're hoping this marketing and branding will work.
So you got about 9% of your student population currently enrolled in SLCs. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to move the graduation rate needle, you're going to have to get that up a little bit higher.
We're going to have to get that up.
Is it cost prohibitive? I mean, you said it costs more to be a part of this program. I mean,
it costs the institution more.
It costs the institution more. So my question is, I mean, are the funds available to do more?
Well, right now, campuses, and I think we'll continue to have to reallocate, which in recent years it's not been easy. But I didn't count this up. I'm estimating among our 13 community colleges this fall, I would estimate that there were 25 SLC programs that would have been offered but are not being offered because they could not recruit enough students.
Okay. So the funds is not the restriction, it's the ability to get
It's not the
students.
major restriction,
Okay.
quite honestly. It's letting students know what these are and saying, look, your long-term graduation is what needs to be your priority, not what's easiest for you next semester. That's not easy for adult students.
Thank
It's
you very
not
much. Impressive.
Yeah, I was going to add, it's just not a silver bullet to address graduation. There are multiple issues that affect graduation rates, and one of the issues that we as a board and the staff of the Board of Regents, as well as the campuses, are looking at is what are the various variables that impact graduation rate that ultimately will yield the greatest success for us, particularly as we keep in mind the targets and benchmarks of the Complete College Act of 2010. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wade. Vice Chancellor Thompson, I think you have a special
I
presentation.
do. Thank you. I'm going to take off my completion hat and put on my Access and Diversity hat for a minute. Some of you are aware that the TBR Access and Diversity Initiative came into being as a result of the desire to capitalize on the gains we made during the Geyer litigation era that lasted from 1968 to 2005. And I came to the Board of Regents during that period of time when there was really universal determination that we were going to bring the litigation era to an end. And from 2001 to 2005, the work of the central office was focused on getting education policy out of the hands of the federal court. And once this was done, the specific charge to us was to try and institutionalize the specific programs that were successful under Geyer and maintain the gains we made under Geyer, but to broaden our target to include other categories of people who added to the diversity of the system. So in 2003, the central office decided that we needed a cultural shift. We needed to not think so much about what the courts were telling us to do, but to capture the spirit of what could be. And as a result, we created the Spirit of Geyer Award to recognize institutions or individuals who demonstrated exceptional commitment to the spirit of inclusion and opportunity. This has not been an annual award. In fact, we last gave it out in 2010 because it's reserved to recognize outstanding commitment. And today we recognize a person who guided the TBR's efforts for over 20 years, starting with her work in the Attorney General's office, representing the Tennessee Board of Regents until today. You may not know that beginning in 1997, up till now, the Nashville Bar Association has recognized the Tennessee Board of Regents Office of General Counsel for its commitment to the Minority Law Clerk Opportunity Program. We're here today in large part due to the passion of Christine Modisher. I can personally say that I'm here today because of Chris. It was her dogged determination and insistence that there needed to be someone in the central office who thought about this issue every day, and her saying to me, "Wouldn't it be fun to work at the central office?" I'm here today because of that. There's so much more I could say about what Chris has meant to the effort, but those of us who lived through it saw much more than I could say. The actual award was designed in 2003 by renowned Tennessee artist Tom Furman, and he explains the design as follows. The piece represents an abstraction of the pillars contained within the Tennessee Board of Regents logo. One pillar has white glass, the other has black. The black glass is smaller to represent the historically smaller presence of blacks within the system. Each pillar, however, supports the same weight. Sitting on spheres, the pillars are really not stable. It's a fragile balance, but they come together at the top in a crystal sphere that picks up all colors. I hope you would join me today in presenting this award, the Spirit of Geyer Award, to Chris Modisher. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Thompson. And I will say it's better to be on this side of the got you moment as opposed to that side. But you definitely deserve the award, Chris, and we sincerely appreciate all you have done on behalf of implementation and seeing us through the Gower lawsuit and just being a stable force and helping the board and the complete system realize what it needs to be to get out of the court situation and deal with it on a man-to-man, woman-to-woman basis. So we appreciate that sincerely. Thanks again. I would like to deviate briefly from the posted agenda. I saw a former colleague and acquaintance enter the room, and I would like to acknowledge his presence. Many of you know him, but former Regent Stanley Rogers has entered the room, served on the board for a number of years. Stand up, please. When he came in, I was wondering, what have I done wrong now? Yeah. Next, we'll have the reports of the presidents and directors, starting with the report of Director Brad White, representing the Technology Centers. Director White.
Thank you and good afternoon. Vice Chairman Duckett, Chancellor Morgan, Regents. Welcome, Regent Freeman, to the board. Glad to have you with us. Recently, the technology centers have received national attention over the last few years for our completion rates. We continue to receive requests from other states to see how the Tennessee model works. I want to take a few minutes and share with you a news report that an Ohio television station did in late October. Marcy Goulder, WBNS TV special projects producer, phoned the TTC board office early October to schedule a visit to a technology center to see firsthand what the Tennessee model was all about. A visit was set up with a technology center here in Nashville to serve as our systems representative for her story. We'd like to play a short clip for you of their news report for the Tennessee model.
Special Next 10 report for you tonight. Ohio has 400,000 people who need a job and 100,000 job openings. The problem is education.
Only 1 in 4 Ohioans has a college degree. Many others lack the skills for 21st century jobs. State Chancellor Jim Petro announced the Complete College Ohio plan to a standing room only crowd of officials from every college and university in the state.
Now, the goal is to help Ohio create a more educated workforce. Petro's inspiration comes from a school in Tennessee.
Nathan Foote is back in school, learning how to weld. 10 years ago, he was a new college graduate with a degree in sociology.
There wasn't much of a market for it, so I ended up in retail. And that is not where I wanted to be with my life.
That mismatch between college degrees and real-world skills worries Jim Petro, Chancellor of the Ohio Board of Regents. The state jobs website shows 100,000 jobs available. But Petro says too many grads have the wrong degrees. Even more have no degrees at all.
Fewer than 55% of Ohio students who start college ever graduate with a bachelor's degree. At community colleges, the graduation rate is lower still. Petro says in the job market, a partial education isn't worth very much.
You can't put 5 semesters of college on your resume.
He says the day has come when all Ohioans need a post-secondary education. With the layoffs of the recent recession, many workers recognize that. They're returning to school.
75% of our students are non-traditional. They work, they may have a family, they have obligations beyond going to school. We have to design our curricula to meet the needs of those students.
So he's proposing some big changes for Ohio education. Many of them are in place at the Tennessee Technology Center in Nashville. Here, 89% of all students graduate. 89% get good jobs, too.
I like to phrase it as real skills for real jobs.
Mark Lenz directs the center, which offers 27 programs from machining, tool and die making.
Let me see that piece, and then that pipe will go in it like that.
To barbering.
Lather it up, go through your strokes.
And high-tech computer design, which creates 3D objects from a drawing.
Now this was printed in one piece.
Lenz says what students learn is determined with the help of advisors, people who work in business and industry.
They actually are required to review our curriculum to approve it as being applicable to the industry.
Students take classes in blocks without breaks so that those who go part-time can work their current jobs while they prepare for better ones.
They require for me to, know a little bit about hydraulics, pneumatics, and hydraulics. So I'm just trying to keep up with the current trends.
Petro wants Ohio colleges to do the same thing.
The whole idea of scheduling in a manner that fits the work schedule of the student is critical. They do that in Tennessee. More and more will be doing it in Ohio.
In Tennessee, students are treated like real workers and expected to act like them. They clock in and out with a fingerprint. They work in labs set up to look like real shops. They do classwork and homework, but also spend 1/3 of their time learning the importance of good work habits.
In order for haircuts to be given, the barbers have to be there. We do not need late nights and coming in tardy.
That's pretty good welding standard.
Students graduate sooner than in Ohio, an average of 12 months.
We were graduating because we've taken the fluff out of it and we're putting people to work.
They also earn 30 college credits, which transfer to community colleges and let them earn an associate's degree in 1 more year. Those credits then transfer to state colleges, where students can get a bachelor's degree in 2 more. So students don't have to wait for years to be employable. That's something Petro says Ohio needs.
We put in place things that drive completion, that keep people in school. We make it easier for them to stay in school. And then we recognize each stage of their completion.
The Tennessee plan that gives Nathan Foote a bright future is one Petro wants for Ohio.
So sky's the limit from there.
Petro wants to lock in tuition rates, too, when students start college for all 4 years. But colleges would have the option of raising tuition after 6 or 7 years for students who have enough credits to graduate but choose not to. We have a special Next 10 report for you tonight.
Okay. Likewise, when Bill and Melinda Gates visited Nashville and to talk about the TTCs, they said, Melinda and I were impressed a couple of years ago when we visited a Tennessee Technology Center, an institution that provides young adults with technical training and certificates. Its graduation rates are significantly better than those of its peers because it focuses on teaching job skills that are in high demand, and it has adapted to meet the needs of students who are juggling school, work, and family. Because of institutions like Tennessee Technology Centers, I am optimistic about the potential of innovation to help solve many of the problems with our post-secondary system. That was from Bill and Melinda Gates. We appreciate the opportunity to work with other states and thought the board would appreciate us sharing this positive news, not only for the TTCs, but for the TBR system. We would like to congratulate Ralph Robbins, director at TTC Livingston, on his recent award as Outstanding Citizen of Overton County. Ralph is well deserving of this award for his leadership and community spirit and his long service at Livingston. So congratulations, Ralph. We also want to recognize Brian Collins for his many years of service and leadership within our TTC system. He just retired from TTC New Bern, and we wish him all the best. I'm sure he's out deer hunting today. On a sadder note, you may remember the vibrant, energetic young woman named Ruth Cohill at our June board meeting. She was the Outstanding Student of the Year coordinator at Ripley. She was here with Greg Patrick, the 2012 Outstanding Student. Tragically, she was killed a couple of weeks ago in a freak car accident. Ruth's loss is a huge loss to TTC Ripley as well as to the entire system. Our thoughts and prayers go out to her family and her extended TTC family. We hope you will enjoy reading our TTC newsletters. There's some other information in there, and reviewing the activities that are going on from Elizabethton to Memphis. We appreciate all the board does to assist our institutions and continue to meet the students' needs. A final note to the directors after this board meeting. We will need all TTC directors to meet in the large reserved dining area for approximately 15 minutes. And with that, I would like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and my advice to you is to spend all the time you can with friends and family this season.
But thank you, Brad. We appreciate that.
Thank
Any
you.
questions or comments for Director White? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Next, we will have President Mary Lou Apple giving the report for our community colleges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to call attention to our newsletter here and encourage you to look at the distinctive icons here for the 4 areas on completion, partnership, workforce, and student success. These are the 4 areas, and the student stories in particular are interesting and informative about what's going on in the community colleges. In response to some of the reports you've heard today, we want to encourage you to join us as we try to change the culture and the thinking of our students into wanting to complete, desiring to be in accelerated programs, desiring to do a structured learning environment, and to step up to the challenge of completion. We're challenging ourselves to talk to one person every day about completion. We ask you to join us in talking about the value added of education. Each board meeting, we want to bring to you a special presentation, and today I would like to introduce John Churchill. He is Executive Director for Workforce Development at Southwest Community College. John.
I want to thank you for an opportunity to allow Southwest Tennessee Community College to talk a little bit about its new Industrial Readiness Training Program. The Industrial Readiness Training Program come about over a need. What happened is the mayors were invited to a meeting with leadership of Southwest with some community leaders, and basically they announced to the mayors that they were no longer going to look for candidates in the Memphis-Shelby County area. They had gone through 30,000 resumes. Out of that 30,000 resumes, they found 2,000 they thought they might want to look at. Out of that 2,000, they selected 200 to interview. Out of that 200, they hired 60, and that was 3 months ago, and they had 20 of those 60s left. You know, the rest had either quit or had drug problems or tardy. They had to be laid off. So, and they just said, it's too expensive, too hard, we'll no longer do it. Southwest gave a challenge. They said, give us the people that you've rejected for 3.5 weeks, and we'll show you some of the best workers in the world. They took us up on that challenge with one caveat. This was early November, and they said, we need the first batch of students by the end of June so we can start hiring in February. So Southwest staff worked through the holidays. The first class of the industrial readiness class was started in, I think it was January 7th. We had 19 students. Out of that 19 students, the company hired 17 of them. And about 3 weeks later, another company hired one of the others. So it's been a very successful program. What the program does for the student, it allows them an opportunity to learn and practice the skills that industry is looking for. It allows, most of them are either unemployed or underemployed. It allows in 3.5 to 4 weeks for them to go to unemployed or underemployed to making $15 an hour if they're willing to work. It, let's see, 60%, about 60% we project of the students that go through that program will have been hired by a company. And The biggest thing it does for them is they start to make the connection between self-improvement and I'm now able to better take care of my family. And we have a lot of the students now asking about college courses that would have never done that before. What it does for the companies is it allows the companies come in and participate in the class, and it not only helps them select the right person, but it helps them put that person in the right job within the company. We're going to show you a video that'll tell you more about it than I could tell you in 2 hours of talking. The only other thing that I'll say, let's see, let me make sure I have everything here, is we are being duplicated, or replicated, I guess you could say, for multiple colleges, community colleges outside the state, and one college within Tennessee is looking at this program to service their local communities. Electrolux, we just finished yesterday, the last class. We were trained 71 candidates for Electrolux. What Electrolux said is exactly the opposite that other companies said. They said, we can't believe the Memphis area workers, and you know how enthusiastic they are. We wished our workers that are working for our company in other cities were as good as the ones in Shelby County and Memphis. And that was quite a turnaround. And once again, I'll show you the video. It'll tell you more than I could ever tell you.
Industrial readiness training at Southwest Tennessee Community College. Enhancing skills for the 21st century.
The IRT program, Industrial Readiness Training, actually is for anyone out there who wants to be successful.
The Industrial Readiness Training program did help change my life.
If you have the same work experience, absolutely I would hire someone from the Industrial Readiness Training way before I would ever look at someone who does not have that.
In the Industrial Readiness Training program, we use a number of techniques to help build the confidence in individuals. I look at it as like an NFL mini camp. Most of these people have many of these skills, but they're just not confident in them. They just need time to brush them up and get them ready for something like the first draft.
Southwest Tennessee Industrial Readiness Training Program is a program that basically identifies and trains people who are able and willing to do work in the industry, but need some refresher training. We provide training in foundational skills and some technical skills. The IRT program provides local business and industry with a qualified applicant pool, people who are able to go to work immediately.
I can't say enough good things about the industrial readiness training that is put on with Southwest Tennessee Community College. It's a great program. It better prepares candidates and has really made my job easier when it comes to hiring. Those candidates know manufacturing skills as well as a lot of the soft skills when it comes to communications and how to interact with their coworkers.
Southwest Industrial Readiness Training Program looks for candidates who are currently unemployed or underemployed, but we specifically seek out or target individuals who show an ability and a willingness to work hard and learn. A lot of the components that we teach in the program, some of them seem like common sense to some of the candidates, but they're used as a refresher to help the individual focus on where their strong points are, where their weak points are, and bring it all together to be a better individual employee, as well as someone that works well as a team.
I was working at a job, really wasn't going anywhere with it. Now I'm on a career path at Blue City Brewery working in the industry.
Southwest Industrial Readiness Training Program has significantly impacted our quality and quantity of our applicant pool. We're very excited about the partnership with the college, and we're seeing a lot more applicants come out of the program that's benefiting our company tremendously. We really think it's a win-win situation for our company and for the college and for the employees that are seeking employment in the greater Memphis area.
Our Industrial Readiness Training Program has led innovation by responding to industry's immediate needs. The results have been stronger companies, more jobs, and a workforce capable of fulfilling those jobs.
What they did do is listen to the needs of industry. design and develop curriculum criteria that met both soft skills and hard skills because both were lacking, and then execute a strategy that has truly brought results that any employer, in any industry would be very proud of.
It also provides community leaders with another way to attract new businesses.
Going through the program, it kind of tweaked my skills. They kind of reviewed a lot of things that I knew and helped me sharpen some things that I might have been weak on, and were willing to work with me on that.
The Industrial Readiness Training Program sharpened my skills and gave me confidence to go back into the workforce.
The most exciting aspect of this venture is that students, many of the students who were previously unemployed and had limited opportunities, have a good job, have more options to support themselves and their families.
Before I went through the Industrial Readiness Training Program, I was actually a cook at a couple part-time jobs. And it was like I have to go to work today, as opposed to now. I work at KCG and I make tissue, and I'm like, wow, I get to go to work today.
The overall objective in the Industrial Readiness Training Program is to provide each of the individuals a choice in who they work for, because they feel confident enough that they can go before any employer and have 80 to 90 or even 100% of the basic skill sets in order to be successful at a company that they really feel invested in.
Not only would I recommend the IRT program, I already have. I recommend that anybody that wants to come in and work hard and find out what they're capable of, this is the program for you.
I would definitely recommend the Southwest Industrial Readiness Program to anyone who's looking to better their life, anyone who's looking for a career advancement.
It has opened doors for me that I never thought I'd be able to walk through. It put me in a position where I'm able to begin a career. And I guarantee if you'll give a program a try, it'll benefit you as well.
The IRT has made a great difference in my life. And if you are motivated, it will make a difference in yours.
Improve your chances for a brighter future. If you're motivated and ready to enhance your opportunities in the job market, it's time you checked out the Industrial Readiness Training Program at Southwest Tennessee Community College. Call.
And the last final comments I'll make is two of the companies that we're working with are now talking to us about degree programs for their frontline workers and frontline supervision. And many of the students that have graduated from this class, gotten jobs, are coming back to us and say, okay, now how do I continue this on? You know, I see a good thing here, how do I move on? And the last comment I'll make is the comments you get from the students. And, you know, constantly they come back. I had one individual come to me, he actually came on campus, looked us up. He says, I want you to know that I had my children taken away because I couldn't support them. 2 weeks ago, I got them back. He said, you not only changed my life, but you've changed generations of my family's lives. So it's, you know, we're really proud of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, that ends our report. We thank you and thank all the members of the region for supporting our institutions and our students.
Thank you, President Apple. Are there any questions? Thank you. Excellent report. Next, we have President Brian Noland for the report from our universities. Dr. Noland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good afternoon again. This is truly an exciting time of year on campus. It is a time of year in which students are preparing for finals. In fact, at many of the institutions, finals are wrapping up today. It's a point at which you see students and they realize it's no longer September. What happened to October and November? How do we make up for that lost time? But it's a time on Saturday when across the system, at our institution in particular, we'll graduate 1,200 students. Students who will walk across the stage, receive a degree. That's the embodiment of complete college. Within your university system, we produce 17,500 degrees per year, of which 12,749 are bachelor's degrees. So in a given time period, 17,500 Tennesseans will realize the opportunity to receive a bachelor's degree, master's degree, professional degree, everything to law school and med school at East Tennessee State University. I would posit that your universities are the engine that drives the state's economy, are the engine that serves as the underpinning of our culture, are the engine that drives our healthcare system. Within our region, just speaking specifically for ETSU, you cannot go into an elementary school, a middle school, or a high school that's not dominated by alums or run by a principal who graduated from ETSU. You could say the same if you were in Murfreesboro, if you were in Cookeville, if you were in Clarksville, or if you were in Memphis. We're the entity that powers the economy of the state. Much of our accomplishments, at least within the past couple of months, are outlined in high signs. I'm not going to talk through that in depth, but I would like to draw your attention to a few because it provides an example of some of the things that your institutions do on a daily basis that often do not draw a lot of attention, but truly provide the foundation for regions. In Johnson City, just 2 months ago, we opened a brand new clinic. I call it the Downtown Clinic 2, but it's the Johnson City Area Regional Medical Clinic, a venue which we will see more than 15,000 individuals over the course of the next year who will receive the majority of their health and service opportunities through that clinic. Truly a safety net. If that safety net did not exist, there would be many in Northeast Tennessee who would not have the opportunity to see a physician. At Austin Peay State University, the only institution in the state that was recognized by Military Times as a veteran-friendly institution. All of our institutions are veteran-friendly, but under Dr. Hall's leadership at Austin Peay, recognized for excellence in this area. TSU received a $1.7 million grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to strengthen teaching and research in the food sciences at the institution. And at Tennessee Tech, funding was received from the state to move their boilers from coal to natural gas, thereby realizing cost savings as well as enhancing opportunities for clean utilization of natural resources. And finally, at the University of Memphis, in one of the philanthropy goals, $3.7 million gift from the Helen and Jabby Hardin Charitable Trust to support the Helen Hardin Honors College, the School of Public Health, and the Women's Athletic Program at the University of Memphis, moving the university close to the realization of its campaign goals. These points just reflect a little bit of the diversity that you see across the system. I'd like to answer a couple of the questions that were posed around completion and would be happy to work with staff to provide greater granularity to these data points. But as you examine, Regent Freeman, your question on completion, about half of the students who start at a baccalaureate institution in the state graduate within 6 years. Our 4-year completion rates are right at about 21%, not where they need to be, but for those students who start and graduate within 4 years, that number's 21. If you go to the 6 years, that number's right about half. There's a lot of work that's underway. In fact, everything we're doing, from the means through which we accept students, to advise students, to place students in residence halls, living learning communities, all the way through the manner in which we look to recognize excellence on the institution, is driven by completion. But that drive towards completion ultimately comes home with the things that we're going to do on Saturday, when those students walk across the stage and receive their degree. I had the chance last week to meet with a young woman who works in our adult commuter programs at ETSU. I spent about 20 minutes learning her story. She moved to Johnson City from Arizona. Her husband came to the region for work. She went to work for a law firm, and she worked at that law firm for the better part of 5 or 6 years. She will be the first person in her family to receive a degree. And with tears rolling down her face, she said, "I wish my father was still alive to see me receive this degree." She's 65 years old. Her daughter is enrolled at East Tennessee State University, and her granddaughter will enroll at East Tennessee State University. We often talk a lot about the personal aspects, but Ms. Janet Riggs at ETSU will be the first person in her family to receive a degree in her mid-60s, and she is serving as a role model for her family. I'd like to turn to Dr. Phil Oldham, president of Tennessee Tech, who is going to dig in a little bit deeper on one of the efforts that are underway across the system to enhance completion through a focus on student assessment of learning outcomes. Dr. Oldham.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. Most of you are aware that I'm still a freshman president at Tennessee Tech starting July 1st. And so I'm now a 5.5-month expert on these matters. It's a pleasure to be with you to share some of this. One advantage to being a new president is the opportunity to see things with fresh eyes, I think, and see things for the first time. And I can honestly say that I've been very pleasantly not surprised, but benefited by the opportunity to see what all is going on and all the efforts. And I think what I want to highlight for you right now is indicative of what's going on all of your campuses, not just Tennessee Tech, but I think there's a lot going on that you should be very proud of, and I hope you have the opportunity to explore these in greater detail. I would start out by saying you've already heard a lot today about student success and what generates student success. Fundamentally, if you boil it all down, you come to one conclusion, that student engagement equals success. No matter how you measure it, how you gauge it, the more engagement that a student has at any level, the more successful they become at graduating at higher rates, earning better grades, and with improved learning outcomes. But ultimately, I would say that it's not just what a student knows that makes them valuable. It's ultimately what they can do with that knowledge. And so that's some of the flavor that you'll see on all of our campuses, but at Tennessee Tech, we're really focusing on things that improve that level of engagement in the learning process. So active learning environments, learning villages, mobile learning environments in classrooms for problem-based learning, undergraduate research that creates probably the ultimate environment for learning in a real-life situation. But what I really want to talk about right now in the very few minutes that we have is an effort that's been going on at Tennessee Tech for a little over 10 years now through the Center for Assessment and Improvement of Learning. It's being led by Drs. Barry Stein and Ada Haynes, and this has really become nationally recognized at this point in time. It's been supported by the National Science Foundation for approximately 7 years now, and has actually now been employed and in partnership with over 150 different campuses around the country. And that's to assess skills in critical thinking. And I think I'm going to try to show a quick video clip. We won't have time to see the whole thing, but I think if you can get a couple of minutes of this, you'll get a good flavor of what's going on. When we talk to employers around the state, the kinds of things that they say they want to see in future employees are resonant in what is being measured here. So it's not just what you know as a student, but what you can do with it and how you can apply it. And these critical thinking skills are very important. Evaluating information, other points of view, creative thinking, learning and problem solving, and communication. These are all assessed by this instrument now that's being used across the country. So I'll let you look at the quick video, and then I'll take any questions that you might have.
Many educators believe that critical thinking skills are the most important outcomes of higher education. But what is it actually? And how do you measure it in such a way that both engages faculty to evaluate their own methodology and improve student achievement? Traditionally, critical thinking has been characterized by the ability to evaluate and question formal arguments and conclusions. That is to say, what is called formal reasoning. But the concept of critical thinking has evolved in contemporary use to also encompass the ability to evaluate ideas and plans for solving problems, as well as evaluate one's own understanding of a particular issue. Thus, the skills of evaluating information, problem solving, effective communication, creative thinking, and lifelong learning are now frequently associated with critical thinking. Why is that so important? For one thing, these very skills are what have been characterized as 21st century skills, the higher order thinking skills every student needs to compete in the ever-changing global economy. For another, the explosion of information, some of it misleading or downright false, on the internet and through other media sources makes it absolutely essential that we equip our students with the tools to evaluate the soundness and validity of what they will encounter and to use it effectively. So it stands to reason that if critical thinking is an important outcome, then we must find a way to measure the success or failure of our teaching methods designed to achieve it. This is not only an issue of accountability, it is first and foremost an issue of improving our own efforts. And truth is, how we assess determines what students learn. For example, if instructors tend to assess rote retention of factual information, then students will naturally pursue the goal of memorization rather than developing critical thinking skills, such as those associated with the higher order thinking skills outlined in Bloom's classic taxonomy of learning. The challenge until now, though, has been how do we accurately assess critical thinking skills? How do you find a set of common skills that transcends disciplines? And how do you assess those skills in ways that are both reliable and valid? The CAT, or the Critical Thinking Assessment Test, is the culmination of a lengthy process that began in 2000 and was partially supported by the National Science Foundation to develop, refine, and validate a new faculty-driven assessment tool. Begun by Tennessee Technological University and further refined by faculty from a diverse array of institutions and disciplines, and with guidance from experts in cognitive learning sciences and assessment, the CAT instrument is now being used nationally by a wide variety of institutions. The CAT is a 1-hour exam with a variety of engaging questions that emulate a diversity of real-world tasks for which critical thinking is essential. One part of the test emulates many features of real-world problem solving, including evaluating the relevance of information that might be obtained from an internet or database search, and then using that information to solve a problem. Unlike many standardized tests that rely on multiple choice questions, CAT more accurately reveals students' underlying thought processes when confronted with real-world problems by relying on short essay answers to assess critical thinking. The test is scored in workshop settings by faculty members of the student's own institution. This is perhaps the most significant aspect of the tool. By assessing student performance using a faculty-driven instrument, CAT effectively closes the loop in assessment and quality improvement. The assessment process itself increases faculty awareness, not only of student weaknesses, but also of the effectiveness of their own teaching practices, and the discussion and adaptation of more effective practices are a clear natural outgrowth. This drives improved student learning. These are the skill areas CAT is designed to assess: evaluating information, creative thinking, learning and problem solving, and communication. While faculty in each discipline do not necessarily consider all of these skills to be essential components of critical thinking, most faculty find at least 8 of the 12.
We'll try to stop it. That's all the time we have for that, I think. I don't want to take any more time, but I think you get a feel for what this tool is able to do, and it's actually making a significant difference not only on our campus here, but on campuses across the state and across the nation at this point in time. So really proud of the faculty that have driven this, and proud of the fact that they're from one of your institutions. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any, but thank you for your time.
Are there any questions? Yes.
As much as a comment, it would certainly be interesting to administer that test to all of us and see.
Well, we can set that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan.
Mr. Chair, I have 2 more points. The first is I want to recognize and salute the accomplishments and the leadership of President Sidney McPhee as the university transitioned from its prior conference to Conference USA. This is more than a move that impacts the institution on the playing field. It's a reflective recognition of the advancement that have been made in the institution, both with respect to degree offerings, enrollment, retention, persistence. It is a true recognition of the tireless dedication that Dr. McPhee has given over the course of the past decade to move MTSU forward. This is a big deal. The second is also a big deal, and it's something that I'd like to have a point of personal privilege to say thank you 12 years late. And that's thank you to Chris Modisher. Chris, as a graduate student a number of years ago, you spent countless hours with me providing the background and the history on Geyer, assisting me in legal research, and providing a frame and a lens through which I gained a deeper understanding not only of the history, but of the importance of the work that had been conducted by the board and by others across the state. It's my honor and privilege on behalf of all the presidents across the system, Chris, to present you with this, recognizing your tireless dedication and service to the students of the Tennessee Board of Regents. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Are there any questions for Dr. Nolan? We appreciate the report. Next item on our agenda is unfinished business. There's no unfinished business to come before the board at this time. As such, we will move into new business, which the first item is our consent agenda. Each board member has received a copy of today's consent agenda, and you will have an opportunity today to ratify without discussion all items that are included as part of the consent agenda, unless there is an item that a member of the board would like to have removed from the consent agenda. I will ask at this time, is there an item on the consent agenda that any board member would like to have removed for discussion? Hearing none, under the consent agenda, there are 3 items, the first of which is the proposed program terminations, modifications, and new technical program implementation for the Tennessee Technology Centers. Second item is the revision to TBR Policy 5.02.03.30, Academic Freedom and Responsibility. The third item is revisions to TBR Policy 4.02.20.00, which is the disposal of surplus personal property. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It is moved by Regent Roddy. Is there a second? Second by Regent Freeman. Again, I will ask any discussion. Hearing none, this item requires a voice vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is the same. Consent agenda items are approved. Next item under new business is informational reporting. No vote is required on this information, on these items. First item is the assessment of general education learning outcomes, and I will call on Vice Chancellor Clark to give us the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's my pleasure to present to you today the first annual report on the assessment of general education learning outcomes. I'm not as high-tech as others, so I have a supplemental handout I'd like to pass around. I'll allude to this a little later. Okay. Around the central office, I'm known as the least technologically proficient person, and I'm sorry about that, but it's the truth. Okay.
I'm with you.
Oh, well, okay, you know, I hate to say this, we're both sort of in the same chronological advancement. All right. You know, and also, before I actually begin this report, in keeping with the theme of the day about predictions of success, I wanted to allude to you or to show you an excerpt from a report that was given by Dr. David Wright to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission back on November 15th. What he did was an excerpt of a very extensive report which is available on the THEC website on the prediction of success for students who have completed the general education core curriculum of 41 semester hours before transferring. Or also you will see how that effect had been on the clusters. The green bar there were three cohorts, I should say, 05, 06, 07, 08, 08, 09. Those green bars, which you see that extend further out toward the 0.35, clearly indicates that those students who complete the 41-hour general education core curriculum are about a third of a chance better of completing the bachelor's degree than those who would not have completed the general education core curriculum. This goes along with what Dr. Nichols had stated earlier today, and which Dr. Ellen Weed alluded to. I think that's a very significant finding. I have read that report. It's highly technical, but it always gets back to this essential point that students who complete that are more likely to graduate, or if they complete certain categories, they're more likely to graduate, most specifically in mathematics. You know, a lot of conclusions could be drawn from this, but just two briefly. Of course, one might say that good students do what they're expected to do, and they complete the core, and they, go along and are successful in that regard. Another conclusion we might make, though, is that, and this alludes to something that Dr. Oldham was speaking about, that the exposure to all these particular clusters of study that you see there present students in the community college with a wide array of learning experiences, and they're exposed to different areas and in all those categories you learn differently and you evaluate differently and you learn to think in those particular disciplines. That, in my opinion, prepares a student better for the upper level work that you would get in the junior and senior year in the majors and in the concentrations. So I thought that was a very significant finding, and then, as I said, it complements what we have heard earlier today. I think also in the app there's another slide that I'm not going to put up today, but it alludes to also that there is a positive effect on grade point averages for students who complete these categories. Again, this has some allusion to what I'm going to report today, but I need to give you, before we get into the results of the Gen Ed assessment, I need to give a bit of background here because this is the first time we have done this. As you know, in the fall semester of '04, the Tennessee Board of Regents, Universities, and Community Colleges implemented a common general education core of 41 semester hours in 6 subject categories: communication, written and oral, humanities, social and behavioral sciences, history, natural sciences, and mathematics. Implementation of the general education program followed approval by the Board of Regents in December of '02. The concept of a general education core curriculum was one of the elements contained in the comprehensive study of TBR operations that was published in 2001 and titled Defining Our Future. Development of the program was originated by a task force consisting of TBR institutional representatives with activities coordinated by the TBR Office of Academic Affairs. Associated with each of the core subjects was the inclusion of learning outcomes that were developed by the task force based upon suggestions and advice from the TBR campuses, and you'll see those learning outcomes in just a few moments. One of the presumptions intrinsic in the approval of Common General Education operation was the necessity of assessing the progress of student attainment of the learning outcomes. To initiate this assessment, a system-wide planning conference for appropriate campus personnel was held in October of '07 at the Renaissance Center in Dixon. The primary goals of the conference were to launch awareness of the system-wide endeavor in assessment and to discuss strategies for a comprehensive approach to assess student attainment of the general education learning outcomes. Organization of the effort was assigned to the General Education Advisory Committee, which is a group of campus faculty representatives whose main functions are to make recommendations relative to the approval of campus courses, submissions for adjustments to the approved general education courses, and other elements of general education study. Subsequent to the meeting, the General Education Advisory Committee recommended to Vice Chancellor Paula Short that the assessment of the achievement of learning outcomes in general education should be phased in by concentrating our initial efforts on the vital competencies of writing, oral communication, and mathematics. Dr. Short approved this recommendation, and a pilot assessment of the vital competencies occurred in academic year 08-09. Reflecting the magnitude and importance of the system-wide assessment of general education, it was included as an essential element in the current TBR strategic plan charting the course, Tennessee Board of Regents 2010 to 15. The annual reporting of general education outcomes is an element in the key priority quality in that strategic plan. A bit more of context here for this report that I'm talking about, which is for the year 2010-2011. Reflecting the inclusion of the assessment in the system-wide strategic plan, activities were conducted at each of the TBR universities and community colleges in 09, 010, and 10-11. The process built upon lessons we learned in 08, 09, and a common template for reporting results was issued for campuses to follow. And the 2010-11 report, as I've stated, is the first time that we will be reporting the results, and it's the first one to fall under the elements of the strategic plan. A foundational premise of the TBR General Education Assessment is that campus plans are designed to meet the needs and missions of the individual institutions. Invariably, the TBR General Education Assessment complements overall campus plans of institutional effectiveness and is a component of the campus efforts at overall accountability. In this plan that we have, campuses have the flexibility to choose which general education courses in communication and mathematics are utilized for the assessment, and whether they need to sample student populations or test total cohorts, and to select the numbers and descriptors of what constitutes student competencies in those outcomes. The results of the campus assessments are then recorded in a common template, as mentioned. The Office of Academic Affairs at TBR then reviews each campus report and collapses the various campus descriptors into two evaluations, satisfactory and unsatisfactory, and you'll see that in just a few moments. Assessment results reveal similar patterns at the universities and community colleges in the competencies that we're going to be looked at. We have to be cautionary, though, about reaching explicit conclusions here because there are a lot of variables included in each of the campuses. The scoring rubrics may be different a bit. Evaluators may be trained differently. But nevertheless, these results are useful, and we'll get there in a minute, I'll tell you, are useful in revealing some consistent patterns of collective weaknesses and strengths in the learning outcomes. All right, you can go ahead and put them. Throughout the system, achievement of learning outcomes is lower in mathematics than in writing and in communication. As I said, courses selected for testing in mathematics vary considerably among the institution, ranging from contemporary mathematics, college algebra, probability and statistics, to pre-calculus. But regardless of the courses chosen, percentages of satisfactory attainment in the five learning outcomes averaged 34% at community colleges, that's unsatisfactory attainment, and 31% at the universities. These percentages reinforce other testing patterns indicating the need for further preparation for entering freshmen in mathematics at TBR institutions. We're hopeful that the new Tennessee Diploma Project, which now requires 4 years of math, will help in that regard. But this is not surprising. We see math being the lowest achiever all the way across. We'll look at that in a little more detail in a minute, but to allude to the communication, the highest percentages of achievement are in oral communication, with the universities having about an 85% satisfactory attainment and 84% at community colleges. Writing has a moderate disparity in achievement. between the community colleges and universities. The average range of satisfactory achievement at community colleges is 73% and 66% at universities. A lot of reasons could be explaining this little disparity, but a primary factor is this. Community colleges utilize principally English 1010 Composition 1 to make the assessment. Universities primarily use English 1020 Composition 2. Now, the course requirements in Composition 2 are more extensive than those in the basic English 1010. This has the research element in it in 1020. But community colleges use 1010 because all students in the community colleges must take that course, regardless of whether they're in a transfer program or not. And so that helps to explain a little bit of that disparity. But let's go now and look at these various things. For the universities in mathematics, the university students seem to have more difficulty with outcome 4, which is using technology for mathematical reasoning and problem solving. Community college students had more trouble, now if you go to them, in outcome 1, solving problems and determining if the results are reasonable, and outcome 3, making meaningful connections between mathematics and other disciplines. Again, you can see that pattern of the 60s to the 30s all the way through there, and that's pretty common for the universities too. A couple of them, of the satisfactories, got into the 70s, but that's a pretty consistent trend. Now, for oral communication, in both universities and the community colleges, the lowest score was outcome 5. Students are able to manage and coordinate basic information gathered from multiple sources. That, again, is the research element, whether it's in a speech or whether it's in a composition. But that's at the heart of what we do ultimately in the university program, is research. So there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. Now, having taught composition for many years, I know the challenge there is in English 1020, and students do have a problem with that. But ultimately, if they get through the course, they're much better off, and they're able, I think, pretty well to be prepared. But it is a tough course. It's one that some students maybe never get through, but that is the problem. If you look at community colleges on oral communication, you'll see down there, again, that's the highest level of lack of attainment. Now let's go to writing just for a moment. And these outcomes are the same because they're communication categories. And in the universities, again, you see nearly 40% having trouble with that outcome 5. And in the community colleges, the same one, outcome 5. That leads me to that handout that I gave you. What the campuses did, part of the element of reporting, was to indicate to us what are you doing where you see weaknesses, or building upon strengths for that matter. So what that is just a summary of what they filed. It's much more extensive in the final report, but what we have seen and what we hoped would have happened when we were initially meeting in October of '07 is that faculty would engage themselves in meetings and conferrals to look at all these particular data that they have and to develop strategies where they might improve. I don't think that had occurred before, so that is something that is very important in this whole aspect of assessment of learning outcomes. I know as a teacher in an English department, we never did that. I hate to say that. Now, we talked anecdotally about students and how poorly they did in this or how well they did in that, and even individual students for that matter. But never did we look at systematic data like this. Now, again, we have to temper this data. It's not perfect, but it certainly gives, I think, a conclusion that has some relevance to it. And certainly the faculty are engaged wherever they see a problem. Now, Dr. Oldham mentioned critical thinking. Another part of this that we asked them to report on as far as their assessment or improvement activities is critical thinking. Critical thinking is a part of performance funding that is directed by THEC. Various instruments are used by campuses, and Dr. Oldham alluded to the more innovative one there, but there are a lot of national instruments that are used by campuses. And again, everything is under the umbrella of critical thinking, leading to higher lower ordered learning. Well, again, this is an aspect where faculty are engaged in looking at what they see from those data. Some institutions have put critical thinking as a part of their quality enhancement plan as required by SACS. And so that really ratchets up everything for them in that regard. At any rate, all of this is an element to improve, and I think we're seeing the beginnings of that. Now, we've had 2 years of assessment coupled with the pilot year. I think what we've got to do now is an attempt to figure out a mechanism to share the best practices that we see. You can look at those highlights, and if there's a good thing that's being done on one campus, that should be shared, and maybe it can be helpful to another campus. Also, we've got to look at how we might work with those additional learning categories. These are the vital competencies, and they're easier to perhaps assess. When you're into humanities, social sciences, and so forth, is much more difficult. And no one has actually figured that out too well, although I would say that Dr. Oldham's critical thinking might be along that way a little bit. You know, it's nothing to know that the significance of the date 1066. What are the further implications of that? Well, you can measure about 1066, but you don't know what else is engaged in that. So there's a lot of challenge to be confronted, but I was really happy to see these reports that came in and to look at them, and I'm very impressed with what the campuses are trying to do with this data, faculty in particular. So that concludes the report. Are there questions or comments? I'd be happy to respond.
Are there any questions of Vice Chancellor Clark? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the financial report overview. I'll call on Vice Chancellor Sims for that report.
Mr. Vice Chairman, real quickly, it's a written report. It's before you. I have no comments to make. Be glad to entertain any questions anyone might have.
Since we have some time, I was going to ask you about 1066. We're trying to save enough time.
That's right. We appreciate your saving time for Vice Chancellor Gregory. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we're still in new business, but these are items that will require action. The first action item, is to receive and act on the recommendation for the director at Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern. Chancellor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was referenced earlier, in May 2012, Director Brian Collins at New Bern gave notice of his intent to retire effective November 16, 2012. We began the search for a new director in August of this year. We had a committee that was made up of 12 people, consisting of one Board of Regents member, Regent Jonas Kisber, a community college representative, Bruce Blanding from Jackson State, and we had numerous representatives from faculty, staff, students, and the Center's General Advisory Committee. There were 39 applicants in the pool that were evaluated. The search committee selected 4 candidates to interview. Interviews were conducted on November 14, 2012. Of those 4 candidates, 2 were chosen to further interview with the Chancellor and the Vice Chancellor. Of those 2 candidates, one individual I believe stood out as the right candidate at this time for this position. And Mr. Chairman, after much thought and consideration, I'm pleased to recommend to you Ms. Donna Hastings as the next director of the Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern. Ms. Hastings is currently serving as the interim director at the TTC New Bern, has been assistant director there since 2008. She has served as the Test Center Manager at the TTC Jackson from 2007 to 2008 and as a Master Instructor for the Business Systems Technology Program from 1997 to 2006. She also served 7 years as the Plant Controller for various industries in the Jackson area. She holds a Master's of Art from the University of Memphis and a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Tennessee at Martin. If you take this recommendation, her start date would be January 1st, 2013. Actually, I think that's January 2nd, 2013 or something like that, at a salary of $95,877. That is my recommendation, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Regent Morgan. Before we proceed with the motion, I would ask Regent Kisper if you would like to add any comments since you served on the search committee.
Thank you. We were pleased that we had several highly qualified candidates for the position. Ms. Hastings brings a lot of knowledge and experience regarding the TTC system to the position, as well as experience being Assistant Director for the past 4 years. Therefore, I would like to make the motion to accept Chancellor Morgan's recommendation of Ms. Donna Hastings as the next Director at TTC Newman. I so move.
It has been moved by Regent Kisper that we accept the recommendation and hire Donna Hastings as the next Director of TTC Newbern. It was seconded by Regent Freeman. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, this is a voice vote. Thank you. This is an item that, as you have heard, can be conducted via voice vote. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes the same. Motion is approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2012-2013 October revised budget that will be presented by Vice Chancellor Sims.
Mr. Vice Chair, this will take a little longer than my last presentation. If we'll move to the next one. Just to start off, a little bit of context. Most of you realize that we have several budget cycles a year. We're kind of in the second budget cycle, our revised budget. The original budget is a July proposed. Back me up one. The proposed budget that you adopt in June is our operating budget for the year. It gives us legal authority to operate. Lots of stuff we don't know in June, in particular when the institutions submit those budget proposals in April. Lots of things they don't know. They don't know what their enrollment for the fall or for this year will be. There's still uncertainty as to what the budget passed by the legislature might be. So that budget has lots of estimates in it. The revised budget that's before you for action today addresses many of those factors like enrollment. Most of you realize we had a dip in enrollment this time. That affects both the revenue and the cost side of the equation to some degree. The remainder of the slides that you'll see are high-level summaries of the material that was included within your board book. The board book compared the proposed budget that you acted on in June to these revisions. The information we'll be sharing with you today is more, I believe, of an apples-to-apples comparison. It will look at the October revised budget from last year to this recommendation, so it gives you more of a true picture of what the comparisons are. We start off with our state appropriation reconciliation. This is the money that the state has provided. The big items there, you can see non-recurring improvements. Those were items that were in last year's budget that are no longer in this budget, so they're a deduct. Our 2% base reduction is there, as well as several other items, improvement funding, so to speak, that the legislature provided. The big numbers there, the formula outcomes and salary increase, health insurance premiums, and TCRS. Would note the non-recurring transition funds were in last year's budget, or are in the current year budget. Next year's budget, we should receive our final slug of those monies. And then the University of Memphis Lambeth campus, there was transition funding there that was included in this year's budget as well. All told, about $21 million of additional state money to get us to a total of $610 million. Next slide, we will layer we will look at all of our revenues. The top line is exactly what we've gone through it in terms of explaining those adjustments that get us to a $21 million difference. Things to highlight here: maintenance fees, revenue up about 4%. Again, that is influenced by enrollment. Enrollment decreases across the system really depressed that number. We would have expected a number probably more to the tune of $45 to $50 million when we were planning the budget in June. So you can see that it did have an effect on us. The biggest adjustment you see is in other fees there, a growth of 10% or a little over $5 million. That is largely accounted for through a fee that the board approved last March that was approved to fund the Ready to Teach program. You'll remember our colleges of education have moved to a new method of instruction, a new teacher preparation method, and this was designed to fund that new teacher preparation method. In total, revenues from all sources up about $42 million over last year. This is the pie graph. Renee Stewart and I, Renee prepares these beautiful pie graphs and she makes fun of me when I don't use them, so I'm going to use them. The thing that I want to point out, if I can, 12-13, if you'll look at the blue part, state appropriations and tuition and fees, a little over $1.6 billion in total. Those are the primary drivers of our unrestricted and non-auxiliary. Those are the drivers of our general budget, the things that we really have a lot of discretion over. If you look at the shares there, that $1.6 billion, 36% of it comes from the state, 64% comes from students. So again, it echoes a theme that you hear us talk about on an annual basis about how this funding of education has shifted from primarily a state responsibility to now where it's primarily a student responsibility in terms of financing. We'll now migrate to our expense side, looking at our education in general expenditures by functions. I'll touch on two of these and be glad to answer questions if there are questions on others. The big changes in research, that number, that 10% reduction, was largely driven by the 2011-12 numbers being a little overstated. And when I say overstated, we had one institution in the research area that had accumulated carry forward money within their operating budget to construct a facility. So that number in 11-12 was a little higher than it would ordinarily be and accounts for most of that 10% reduction. The other item down in scholarships and fellowships, that number is driven largely by whatever our tuition and maintenance fee adjustments are, since scholarships largely respond to what the cost of education is. You'll recall that what the board approved last year were tuition increases or maintenance fee increases ranging from about 4% to a little over 8%, so that number's right in line there. The remainder of these increases in the 3% range largely are accounted for by a couple of facts we'll touch on in a few minutes. We are largely a human resource enterprise, lots of salary, lots of benefit costs. Last year's, or the budget we're in this year, had a 2.5% state mandated cost of living increase in it, so that's largely reflected in these numbers. Next slide again is the pie chart on the functional piece. I'm going to name a few pieces out for you. When you look at instruction, that blue piece in 12-13, research, public service, and academic support, really the things that are the academic engine of institutions. Over 63% of what our anticipated spend is, our budgeted spend, is really driven toward that academic engine, the instructional, research, public service missions. The next chart, we refer to it as natural classification. You can think of it as the purpose for which the money's being spent. Salaries, benefits, again, about a 4% increase there, largely reflecting the state-mandated cost of living increase. Supplemental increases approved by the board in September as well. The travel number looks out of line in terms of an increase amount. In total, $25 to $30 million in a $1.9 billion budget is not my mother would slap me, it's not a significant number. The $4.2 million increase looks big. What we believe this really is reflective of is increased levels of professional development activity being engaged in after a dry spell over the last few years. Many times the professional development activities involve attendances of conferences, et cetera, that have some component of travel associated with it. Absent questions, again, pie chart on this. The takeaway, you look at the big blue piece on salaries, you look at the red piece on benefits. This number doesn't vary much from year to year in terms of share. We're right at a 70% spend on salary and benefits. The benefits, as most of you are aware, are largely driven by state government. The benefit structure is mandated through state law, and whatever those costs are costs that we have to bear. The next slide, again, we've gone through the top line here, unrestricted E&G, just showing you sort of spend numbers without as much detail on auxiliaries and restricted and miscellaneous transfers. Auxiliaries, as a reminder, things like bookstores, dining hall, housing, student housing is a big piece of the spend there. Restricted is a significant number. It represents right at 30% of our total budget. That is largely financial aid. Think about Pell Grants, think about lottery scholarships, think about state, the TSSA student grants. So restricted dollars, as a reminder, are dollars where the donor or the grantor restricts the purpose for which we can use those dollars. Transfers, if we'll go to the next one, I'm going to touch on those. My apologies, I'm picking on Renee Stewart today. I had her put this note at the bottom about what the transfers to and from are, and for the life of me, I can't keep it straight. If you'll look at these numbers, where there's a positive number, it really represents where we are moving dollars from our unrestricted funds to other designated funds. So retirement of indebtedness, we're required to set aside money to fund debt that we've entered into primarily through the School Bond Authority. That positive number of $56.1 million reflects money moving from our unrestricted funds into the the dedicated fund for retirement of indebtedness. That's the way this table is laid out. The big change, the material change there, renewal and replacement, we're not setting aside as much money in the current year as we set aside in the last year and probably the last couple of years in this budget. I need to say the last few years have been pretty healthy. We've kind of refunded in some respects R&R, which is equipment kinds of funding. This is really more, I think, a statement about the reduction in enrollment, the enrollment decrease, and not having resources to fund those reserves at historic levels. Next chart is a chart that we've added over the last year. It tries to summarize for you. It's not necessarily a profit loss statement, but it tries to give you a feel for the resources that are available and how they're being applied. You'll note the beginning fund balance is a system of right at $170 million. Institutions, and I need to say that number is higher than it might ordinarily be. We, in the last 2 years, have authorized institutions to carry forward larger fund balances between fiscal years if they had budget plans to use those dollars in the future fiscal year. Otherwise, what we were going through was an exercise at June 30 of moving money from unrestricted into plant funds, let's say, and then July 1 moving it back out of plant funds into unrestricted. Seemed to at least us here to be that if we have plans, let's not move money in order to reflect maybe a ending fund balance that was not really what we intended that fund balance to be. So you have a high number there. You look at unrestricted E&G, the revenues of $1.8 million, our expenses of $1.9 billion. Much of the expense, or some share of the expense in that $1.9 billion, are these uses of the carry forward monies. So when you get to the bottom line on revenues over under expenses and transfers for unrestricted E&G, you see a negative of $100 million, $108 million. That is largely accounting for those dollars that were available at the end of last fiscal year that were carried forward into this year in order to spend. Auxiliaries, the takeaway there is auxiliaries are supposed to break even at least, And based on their revenues and their expenses and their transfers of monies, you can see that they are breaking even. So at the bottom line, the $62 million ending fund balance based upon the budgets that are before you, that $62 million as a targeted ending balance is right in line with what we would ordinarily plan to see at this time of year. This is the chart that everyone's been waiting for. It's the last one I have. It basically wraps up on one sheet exactly what we're asking the board to approve, and that is a budget, revised budgets that reflect about $1.9 billion of spending on unrestricted purposes. I won't go through the numbers for you, but the total expenditures and transfers is a little over $2.9 billion. Total positions of about a little over 17,800. With that, Mr. Chair and members, I'll be glad to respond to any questions. Just as a reminder, this does require a roll call vote.
Exactly. And prior to any questions, you've heard the presentation that has been given by Vice Chancellor Sims as it relates to the revised October budget. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
It is moved by Regent Montgomery. Is there a second? Second, Regent Reynolds. Discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Could you go back to the slide where it says expenditures by function?
Be glad to. Carol will be glad to. I really can't do that. Yeah, that's it.
I like the charts better. Go forward one.
Renee, make a note. We can't take the charts out.
Can you explain to me what institutional support, student services, and academic support are?
I'd be happy to. Institutional support are things like finance, governance of the institution, the executive staff, executive function, those sort. Think about that. Student services, anything that is, I'll use the wrong term, student engagement kind of activities, intramurals, extracurricular activities, those kind of things that engage students on the campus. Academic support, things like libraries, academic administration, the dean's office, those sorts of things.
So which one of those pies helps improve the graduation rate?
Well, first of all, I think as someone that's in institutional support, that's the key piece.
Okay.
Seriously, Regent.
No.
Yeah. I think first of all, instruction.
Okay.
Instruction is vital. I mean, that's the classroom instructor. That is the engagement at that level. Student services is important, and the academic support. I guess I would say. And I may not be the right one to answer that question. I think that they're all significant.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, and I apologize for interrupting you. There, again, each function plays a critical role in the matriculation of the students through our system. Part of our challenge is to try, to the extent that we have the resources, to appropriately allocate them to maximize the return to us as an institution, but more importantly, the return to the students. We rely heavily on the presidents and directors and their team of colleagues to develop these numbers because they are on the front line. We, in turn, provide institutional oversight, but to sit here and say one is more important other than the instructional component, it's tomato as it relates to, your preference versus my preference in terms of where we think the biggest bang for the buck that we spend is going to come from.
Yeah. And Vice Chair, if I can add, not a complete answer, but as an indication, student services was an area where more of our money is now being committed there. There's most of the adjustments in the line item or functions that you saw were in the 3% range. It was at 5%. So I think that's probably an indication in some respects that more money is being committed there because institutions see value, see that as an investment they ought to make.
So I heard somebody stand right there and say that if you get the students engaged, that they'll be successful. And I forget who that was. So which one of those buckets are help with student engagement?
First of all, I would say that several of them do. Student Services clearly does. I think instruction does when you talk about the engagement between faculty members and students. But I would, probably institutional leaders could give a better answer to you on that.
Yeah, and I would add that in the environment we're in now, and one of the things for good or for bad, I think it's for good, but it's certainly there are multiple sides of the argument. But the Complete College Act really focuses our institutions very much on student success, so that I would suggest to you that the presidents who are here today would tell you that virtually every dollar that they're spending within the whole pie is being spent in the way that they believe, that their institution believes, is going to result in better student success and achieving the outcomes. And that's a different way of thinking. I think probably 5 years ago it would have been a little bit harder to argue that, but certainly today, every dollar that's being spent on that chart is being spent because there is the belief that it does lead to student engagement, student success, and the outcomes that have been established by the formula.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, this is an item that requires a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Regent Copeland?
Aye.
Regent Duckett?
Aye.
Regent Ferris? Regent Freeman?
Aye.
Regent Griscom?
Aye.
Regent Humphrey?
Aye.
Regent Kisber?
Aye.
Regent Markham?
Aye.
Regent Montgomery?
Aye.
Regent Raines?
Aye.
Regent Reynolds?
Aye.
Regent Roddy?
Aye.
Regent Thomas?
Aye.
Regent Farland? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next item is consideration of the executive compensation plan implementation, and I will call on Regent Montgomery for the presentation of that item. Most definitely.
Good afternoon. On the agenda for today, we have the recommendation to implement the compensation plan for the presidents, directors, and central office executive staff. If you will indulge me, I'll give you a little bit of history background of where we are today. In 2011 to 2012 academic year, TBR staff worked with a consultant group out of Memphis called the Center Group to review the 2007 compensation plan for presidents, directors, and executive staff, and secondly, to update the plan as appropriate. As we all will agree, the board needs to provide market-based compensation to its institutions and system leaders to increase the board's ability to recruit new members, new leaders, by competing on a variety of factors, including compensation levels, close to existing market levels, and decrease the likelihood that institutional and system leaders will seek other employment based on compensation levels below market. In June of this year, 2012, the consultant presented a report and recommendation to the board committee on compensation and personnel. The committee and full board met, approved, and adopted the consultant's recommendation concerning the methodology for the new compensation plan, but not the specific salaries. The updated plan is based on current market comparisons. The market for presidents is focused on the higher education with the CUPA, which is the College University Professional Association, as the principal data source. The market source for TTC directors was the presidents and directors of vocational schools, and the market data for the executives were obtained from the CUPA, actually 4 sources: the CUPA HR group, the UT Comparable Staff Reports, Economic Research Institute, and a compensation analyst. Considering what the institution's compensation plans pay at the target levels over and other employee groups, the historic practice has been, in terms of compensation plans for presidents and directors, the plan approved by the board established target levels for these groups at 90% of the market average. Based on the board-approved compensation plans, there are 4 community college presidents, 6 university presidents, 4 TTC directors, and 6 system executives that are paid below the target level salary. Our recommendation is to this: to achieve the board's goal of providing competitive salaries for institutional leaders, it is recommended that the salary increases contained in the transmittal, which is in our report on this item, be approved to implement the 2012 compensation plan. You will note that the compensation plan adjustments are limited to 8% annually until such time that the current salary reflects the target salary. This methodology results in all positions being funded at the target salary within 3 years. With regard to executive staff, it is recommended that the chancellor be authorized to implement increases for the executives in the same manner as outlined for presidents and directors, with 8% annual limit until such time that the current salary reflects the target salary. This methodology gives the opportunity for all positions to be funded at the target salary within 3 years. Further, based on the discussion at our chairs meeting last month, it is recommended that the Personnel and Compensation Committee engage with the central office staff in a feasibility study of performance pay plan for senior leaders in year 2013, which is next year. The intent would be to create a compensation strategy that is designed to align financial incentives for institutional and system leaders with the goals and objectives of the state, TBR system, and all institutions. All this is in line with the Complete College Act. Mr. Vice Chair, with that explanation, I will attempt to answer any questions that you may have. If I can't answer them, I know I can get the answer.
Actually, I would ask, are you putting this forward, or would you put this
I will put that in form of motion to approve this report.
Thank you. Regent Montgomery, is there a second? It is second by Regent Copeland. I have a technical question that I need to ask, but I'll yield to any other questions that might come up.
Regent Montgomery, you said 8% annual limit.
That's the limit, 8%.
So, break that down for me in layman's terms. You're saying that
so
there's an opportunity every year to get an 8% increase
until we get to the target level.
Perfect.
Okay. Now there could be a few in the market that don't get 8%. Could actually get 6%. But 8% is what will get us to that point
and
within 3 years.
Right, and we leave that to the chancellor.
That's correct.
He has that as his ballpark to work with.
This is correct. That's correct.
And then for the when we talk about pay for performance, that'll be happening in 2013.
That will be a feasibility study that our personnel committee will look at and come back to our board here with a recommendation at some point in time during 2013. Other questions?
The technical question that I had, and I was just asking the chancellor, having been involved in this issue, given the fact that we approve our budgets on an annual basis, as I look to Vice Chancellor Sims over here to my left, the question that I want to make sure everyone is on the same page, if we approve this motion, assuming an individual is greater than 8% below the 90% target, are we approving today a commitment that we would raise that person, and let's say hypothetically they are 24% off of market target, which would take 3 years to get there.
Right.
Does this action today commit us to raise their compensation 8% this year, 8% next year, and 8%?
The action today does that, what you just suggested, that we will not revisit this again next year. It would be an automatic discretion of the chancellor at that point in time. Is that correct?
I think that's a different question.
No, that, you're going to the essence of my question, which then I'm going to ask Vice Chancellor Sims and our General Counsel, I mean, to what extent do we have legal authority to commit us or the organization to a...
Chancellor, I think what I heard Chancellor Montgomery say, I'm sorry, Regent Montgomery. Sorry about that, Chancellor. What I thought I heard him say was that's 8% per year, and it's at the discretion of the chancellor. And I think the question you asked was, are we committing to an automatic 8% per year to get the person to the 90% of what the survey said? That's two different things.
Well,
one is automatic, and one is at the discretion of the chancellor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vice Chair, if I can maybe try to clarify. First of all, on the question about the automatic adjustment, the action, the motion as I understand it, would put in place a presumption that those salaries are funded in 3 steps, whatever those are. So you'd be taking an action that says this time next year, an adjustment would take place, as Regent Montgomery just said. The board is always empowered, if there's a change in circumstance, recession, other issues arise, to take an action contrary to that. If circumstances change to the degree the board feels that's warranted. But the action today, absent revisiting, would implement those increases. Clarification as well, the motion, again, as it's laid out, the Chancellor's authority is as to the executive staff in the central office.
Correct.
Now, I don't know whether that responds to, in part, to the questions, Regent Freeman, that you had, but.
Well, it answers my question because I wanted the board to know that we are, if this is approved, approving a 3-year plan absent our revisiting this on an annual basis.
Yeah, and maybe, hopefully this won't confuse it further, but basically you're taking an action to move to these targets, and we're saying, but we're not going to move any more than 8% per year toward those targets. But you're taking an action to recognize that the target for a particular president is this number, and we're going to implement that over however long it takes to get there. Now, for the executive staff here, it is, again, we're adopting a target. You are authorizing getting to that target.
Correct. To you.
But that's, to me, that's giving that authorization to me to move to
So the
there.
presidents go 8% per year automatic.
Correct.
And then your executive team here, we grant you the 8% and the authority to move them as you see fit.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
And I was glad Vice Chancellor Sims added, subject to approval of the budget, subject to budget.
Yeah,
other funds.
if we get in a circumstance where it's just untenable to move forward on the plan, then the board will certainly have an opportunity. And even though the automatic nature of the president's raises, just so everybody understands, if people aren't performing well, the chancellor would likely be coming to the board and suggesting that we defer one of those. Yeah, just so everybody knows that they still got,
Yeah. And I apologize if that confused, but I wanted to make sure everyone understood, given the fact that I have been involved in the development of this issue, exactly the details of it, at least to the limited extent that I have. It was motion and properly second. Any further questions?
Can I ask one?
Yes.
Having seen the change that happened this week with the head of TennCare in the state of Tennessee, which was a significant increase over everybody else, do we think, and this is probably a question more to the chancellor, do we think there's any political type base touching we need to do. So there's an understanding, particularly within, say, the legislature, of what we're doing, why we're, the actions that we're taking, so that somebody doesn't look at this and try to figure out, well, we have this authority to sort of set certain levels, and all of a sudden now we've got a board that's doing this. I'm just making sure that those bases are touched for us as well.
Regent, we Vice Chairman Duckett and myself have spoken to the governor and both speakers of the legislature about this issue. So we have their review with them. We've already reviewed it with them.
Yes. Yeah. But that's an excellent point, and that's, I mean, the right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing. Yep. Any other questions or comments?
In this case, it's the two rights.
Yeah. Hearing none, this matter does require a roll call vote. Madam Secretary.
Regent Copeland. Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Ferris. Regent Freeman. Regent Griscom. Regent Humphrey. Regent Kisber. Regent Markham. Regent Montgomery. Regent Raines. Regent Reynolds. Regent Roddy. Regent Thomas. Regent Farland. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next item, Vice Chancellor Gregory, 2013 System-Wide Legislative Initiatives.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I've kind of been given the signal to make it snappy, so for me it's like telling a turtle to run fast. If I might, just 30 seconds worth of a moment of personal privilege. It is, I know I'm piling on, but Christine Modisher and I have worked together now for 15 years, and it's been an absolute distinct pleasure, and so I want to add on top of the congratulations that's already been given, what a privilege it's been to be with Christine. This is an item that does require your action at the completion, Mr. Chairman. Each year in December, the board receives a report on the legislative initiatives prior to the legislative session. You will see that in my presentation today, the initiatives relate to the budget initiatives that are being put forward from our system, as well as being adopted by the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The Chancellor did, in his remarks, I think, did a very good job in describing the connectivity between what we're doing with what the state goals are. And I hope what you saw in Dr. Clark's presentation, in Dr. Weed's presentation, in Dr. Nichols' presentation, and Wendy Thompson's presentation, the connectivity between the actions that are going on the campuses and the needs of the state. And what you see in this recommendation is furtherance of that, because you will see the funding of the outcomes-based formula recommendations on this first slide. The Tennessee Higher Education Commission is recognizing the outcomes in the outcome-based formula and recommending an budget improvement of $35.5 million for both the Board of Regents system as well as the University of Tennessee system, which represents about a 4.6% average increase. In addition, a 4% increase is recommended for the non-formula units of both systems. The capital budget priorities are being recognized, and again, just to remind you, the governor has asked, he has asked that we take a close look at our priorities, make sure they're promoting the Complete College Act, and then he is saying, I'd like to get a movement, and he certainly did that last year with both a very robust outlay as well as a capital maintenance recommendation. What you see are on the screen are the actions that you took in September to recognize our top 5 priorities. Those 5 have now been recognized by the Higher Education Commission, along with 2 from the University of Tennessee system, constituting $152 million in capital construction for the 5 projects you see on the screen in front of you. You may recall that we are actively engaged in the planning of those projects using the institutional's form of match. Each one of these projects is bringing to the table non-state funds for match. At the community college level, it is 10%, and at the university level, it is 25%. Please don't ignore the last line at the bottom of the screen, which is a recommendation for capital maintenance. This is improvement of existing facilities at $60.6 million for 58 projects in the Tennessee Board of Regents system. This compares to a very good recommendation last year of about $39 million, so it's even yet beyond that. And so the Chancellor said there's good news as it relates to the budget recommendations. You can see that both on the operating side as well as the capital side. In addition, on the capital side, you will see that the next 6 projects on our list are being acknowledged for planning. This is the same rhythm that you saw last year, where going down our list to take the next 6 projects, we will, our THEC is recognizing, and if the General Assembly goes along, we will begin the planning of these next 6 projects using our own institutional funds to be ready for capital construction at this period of time next year. In addition to that, I'd like to point out to you a budget improvement request that has come forward from us and has now been adopted by the Higher Education Commission, is making its way forward, and that is an attempt to try to refresh equipment at both our community colleges and technology centers and provide seed money for new programs. Very, very briefly, as the governor made his way around the state looking at our institutions, one of the things he was paying particularly careful attention to is connectivity between workforce development needs and academic programs. And this budget improvement would allow us to look at needs in a given geographic area of the state and try to meet those needs with new programs as well as refreshed equipment. Oftentimes it's difficult to begin new programs because it's hard to begin them from scratch. But if we can seed new programs with some of these dollars until we can get our own tuition revenue up, I think that could be a benefit to a number of areas across the state. We see this as the first of a 2-year investment of about $30.4 million, and so we're pleased to see this going forward as a part of the improvement request. Also, the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation administers a program called the TSAA, Tennessee Student Assistance Award. And this is the grant program that goes to the neediest of students across our state who qualify for financial aid. It goes to students that are both in the public and private sector based upon the student's need. And you've heard this presentation from me many, many times, but our student need greatly outstrips our ability to help those at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. So I am very pleased that the Higher Education Commission has adopted this recommendation of an additional $33.6 million increase that we think would service about an additional 18,000 Tennesseans with need-based aid. Now, if I might just move to very briefly a couple of issues that are non-budget related issues I'd like for you to be aware of. These are a couple of policy positions. These are not initiatives necessarily that we're taking, but we've talked numerous times at this board about firearm safety, and what, as you've seen today very vividly, you see our institutions focused on student success. As we're focused on student success, it's also important that we have safe and healthy learning environments for our students. And so, as we have historically opposed the expansion of firearms on our campus, we'd like to continue to do that. And then finally, I'll just mention very, very briefly, I think we would be open to a revisiting of the lottery scholarship discussions, particularly as it relates to the enactment of the 2010 Complete College Act, to make sure that the goals and objectives that are a part of the Tennessee Lottery Scholarship Program line up with the with the Complete College Act of 2010. There's not necessarily at presently a movement underway to do that. It's hard to know exactly where lottery discussions may be going. You are probably watching the revenues like I am. They're becoming more and more robust for the last 2 years, so that kind of lessens the need to do something with the lottery program. So even though we're 6 or 7 years in now, it's still fairly immature with our ability to be able to make long-term projections with lottery revenues. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that completes my report on the legislative initiatives.
Thank you,
Happy to
Vice
answer any
Chancellor.
questions.
Vice Chancellor Gregory, you've heard the recommendations from Vice Chancellor Gregory regarding the 2013 system-wide legislative initiatives. Is there a motion to adopt? It is moved by Regent Griscom. Is there a second? Second by Regent Montgomery. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes the same. Motion is approved. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the November 29th, 2012 meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Capital Outlay and Capital Maintenance. Regent Farris.
The following two action items were presented at the Ad Hoc Committee meeting in November. Number one is revisions to fiscal year 2013-2014 capital outlay request to include name changes to 2 capital outlay projects. The Austin Peay State University project, Trey Hearn Building Addition and Renovation has been changed to Fine Arts Improvements. And then Tennessee Tech's new chemistry building and infrastructure has been changed to Laboratory Science Building and Infrastructure. Second item is a report on student housing at community colleges. The resolution on student housing adopted in 2008 was voted on and will remain the same. It states that there is not presently a demonstrated system-wide need for moving forward with the change in position that would allow the development of student housing at our community colleges. Board members have received copies of the minutes. Vice Chancellor Gregory is present. If there are any questions, unless there are any questions, I will move that the minutes of the November 29th meeting be adopted.
You've heard motion that the minutes from the November 29th, 2012 meeting be approved. Is there a second? Second by Regent Reynolds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by aye. Opposes the same sign. Motion is approved. Next item on our agenda is a resolution of appreciation for Director Brian Collins. Regent Varlin.
Yes, it's my pleasure today to read a resolution of appreciation for the service of Mr. Brian F. Collins to the Tennessee Board of Regents. I regret that Mr. Collins is not here. Someone suggested he might be duck hunting. Whereas Mr. Brian F. Collins has faithfully served the Tennessee Technology Center since January 1996, and whereas he graduated from Lambeth University in 1970 with a BS degree in psychology and held jobs in industry that prepared him for his tenure with the Tennessee Board of Regents system. And whereas he began his career in the Tennessee Board of Regents system at the Tennessee Technology Center at Jackson as an assistant director in 1996, and whereas he was appointed as the interim director of the Tennessee Technology Center at Ripley from November of 1998 to December of 1999 and was appointed director in January 2000 and served until June 2011. And whereas while director at the Tennessee Technology Center at Ripley, he was a member of Ripley Rotary, serving as president from July 2006 through June 2007. He was also a member of the Career and Technical Advisory Board for the Lauderdale County School System. He was also a board member for the WIA SDA 12. And whereas, while director at the Tennessee Technology Center at Ripley, he was instrumental in establishing a higher education center in Crockett County, which now houses 3 TTC Ripley full-time programs. And whereas he also became the interim director at the Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern in July 2007. He continued to serve both schools until his full-time appointment as director of the Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern in July 2012. And whereas the enrollment of the Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern increased from 217 FTEs in fiscal year 2007-2008 to 380 in fiscal year 2011-12. Dual enrollment and special industry training also flourished during his tenure at the Tennessee Technology Centers at Ripley and New Bern. And whereas he has served in numerous leadership roles with the Tennessee Board of Regents, to include serving on the TTC Directors Executive Sub Council from 2001 to 2003 and 2009 to 2011, as chair of the TTC Truck Driving Curriculum Committee and other various ad hoc committees. And whereas he shall be missed by fellow colleagues, faculty, staff, students, and community leaders, and alumni of the Tennessee Technology Center at New Bern. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Tennessee Board of Regents wish to recognize the outstanding career of Mr. Brian F. Collins and express sincere appreciation for his superb leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard the resolution. Is there a second to the resolution? Second by Regent Regent Freeman. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Opposed is the same sign. Motion is approved. We will make sure, short of going to the duck blind, that we get a copy of the resolution to Brian, and we do appreciate his service. Next item on the agenda is a resolution of appreciation for Interim President Dr. Portia Shields. And I call on Regent Thomas.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Before reading this resolution, I would like to compliment our Chancellor. One of the first challenges he had when he assumed this job was to fill this vacancy at Tennessee State University. It was a difficult challenge, and he met it superbly, as you're going to see when I read this resolution. Dr. Shields is present with us today. Those of you that have not met her, Dr. Shields, would you stand briefly and let people see? A resolution of appreciation for the service of Dr. Portia Holmes Shields to the Tennessee Board of Regents. Whereas Portia Holmes Shields concluded 2 years of distinguished service as interim president of Tennessee State University from January 1st to December 31st, 2012, January 1st, 2011 to December 31st, 2012. And whereas at a time when Tennessee State University faced mounting challenges, Dr. Shields embarked on a visioning process to clearly define Tennessee State University's strengths and characteristics. And whereas under Dr. Shields' direction, through collaboration and communication, Tennessee State University achieved full and unconditional reaffirmation from the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. I'm going to pause here and say that is a singular accomplishment, achieving that reaccreditation. And whereas through her tireless leadership, Tennessee State University saw an increase in cutting-edge research, online education, and graduation and retention standards. And whereas under Dr. Shields' leadership, enrollment at Tennessee State University climbed to more than 9,000, the highest in the university's history. And whereas despite unprecedented state budget reductions and limitations, she worked to preserve the university's quality academic programs and services, as well as ensured that the institution's fiscal standing remained sound. And whereas Dr. Shields developed a student-centered philosophy at Tennessee State University focused on and committed to the needs and welfare of students. And whereas in a national survey of student engagement report, Tennessee State University ranked, quote, high in active and collaborative learning, student-faculty interaction, and enriching educational experiences compared with selected peer institutions, other schools within TSU's Carnegie classification, and among other historically black colleges and universities. And whereas Dr. Shields spearheaded the university's successful year-long centennial celebration, joining nearly 90,000 alumni, students, faculty, staff, and friends for a weekend of homecoming festivities. And whereas during her tenure, extramural funding through grants increased by 6.5% to approximately $48 million, overall giving rose 63%. Giving rose 63%, and she joined the Foundation Society of Individuals who give $20,000 or more to the university annually. And whereas Dr. Shields oversaw several infrastructural projects, including construction of an $8 million, 30,000 square foot agricultural biotechnological research building, the dedication of a 4,738 square foot multicultural center, the dedication of a new 18,000 square foot greenhouse, and the $1 million renovation of Hale Stadium, and the dedication of a new indoor practice field. And whereas Dr. Shields established the President's Roundtable of influential alumni and friends who value higher education, and offered advice and guidance to the President, and launched the Flywheel team to coordinate and improve branding and messaging for the university. Now therefore be it resolved that the Tennessee Board of Regents expresses its sincere appreciation to Dr. Portia Shields for her outstanding contributions and leadership to the system, and wishes her the very best in her future endeavors.
Thank you, Regent Thomas. You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a second? Second by Regent Reynolds. Any discussion? I will take a personal point of privilege, having toiled in the community here and in Memphis, and I just want to publicly extend my thank you for a job well done. I know we've talked on several occasions, but your heart was in the right place, and you have done a tremendous job. So I just want to publicly thank you for the work that you have done on behalf of Tennessee State University. Any other comments? If not, this matter requires a voice vote. All in favor of approval of the resolution signify by aye. Aye. Opposes the same sign. Dr. Shields, I call on you for any comments you would like to make.
Thank you. Please. Thank you very much. You can tell a president I'm still a president because I can't pass up a microphone. But I just want to thank you, Chancellor, and all of the TBR staff, as well as the board, for your support. We could not have raised our enrollment without the special consideration that you gave us for good students to get out of state in half the rate. There were so many things that you have done to help our students. I will be saying that tomorrow. You helped us, you supported us, and Chris, now I won't call you every other day. I want to thank you all for all you have done for Tennessee State University. It's a much better institution now, and it is ready to go straight to the top. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Shields. Our next item on the agenda is a resolution of appreciation for our General Counsel and Board Secretary, Christine Modisher, and I will call on Chancellor Morgan for the presentation of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A resolution of appreciation for the services of Christine Modisher as General Counsel and Secretary of the Tennessee Board of Regents. Whereas Christine Modisher assumed the position of General Counsel and Secretary of the Tennessee Board of Regents on April 17, 1995. And whereas since that time she has served as the Chief Legal Counsel to the entire TBR system and provided invaluable legal and policy advice to the Board, the Chancellor, Presidents, and Directors. And whereas she has served capably in her role as Secretary to the Tennessee Board of Regents for more than 17 years. And whereas her dedication to TBR institutions began during her tenure with the Office of Tennessee Attorney General, where she led schools through difficult litigation. Whereas Ms. Modisher provided significant contributions to the TBR goal of increased access and opportunities at all of its institutions by guiding the TBR system through the creation, implementation, and successful completion of the Geyer Consent Decree, which provided unprecedented access to opportunities in higher education in the state of Tennessee. And whereas Ms. Modisher is the latest recipient of the Spirit of Geyer Award, an award that is given only to individuals or an institution best exemplifying the Tennessee Board of Regents' commitment to the goals and ideals of equal access and opportunity. And whereas she has provided analysis of legislation pending before the Tennessee General Assembly and affecting the TBR system for more than a decade and a half, and whereas she has provided, managed, and coordinated all legal services and training for the TBR in order to minimize legal risk and costs, reduce litigation exposure, and ensure legal compliance. And whereas throughout her years of service to the TBR system, Ms. Modisher has performed her duties in a professional, friendly, compassionate, and skilled manner. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tennessee Board of Regents expresses its sincere appreciation to Ms. Christine Modisher for her dedication and her many contributions to the TBR system for nearly 2 decades. Her sage advice will be sorely missed, but the board wishes her well in her retirement. Thank you.
You've heard the reading of the resolution, and technically I need a regent to motion approval of the resolution. It is moved by Regent Freeman, second unanimously. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution signify by aye. Aye. And at this point in time, it's my pleasure as the Vice Chair of the Board of Regents to come forth and present to Chris a dozen roses in recognition for your services and the love and respect that we have for you.
I think I can do this. 17 years ago, when I was offered this job, I was actually sort of nervous about taking it, and a friend of mine gave me sort of sage advice, which was don't panic and keep your mouth shut. I think I have been pretty decent about the don't panic part, maybe not so much on the keep your mouth shut part, and since I'm almost ready to retire, why would I stop that? So I would just like to say just a few words. I truly believe that public higher education is a foundation of both our American democracy and our economy. And it's under threat from a lot of different sources right now. And but it has been a pleasure and an honor for me to work with so many incredible people over the course of the years who have been dedicated to supporting and furthering public higher education. You as board members, both past and present, have volunteered your incredible time and energy to become familiar with this vast Board of Regents system and have made policies and budget decisions that affect our 215,000 students and almost 18,000 employees on a daily basis, and for that I thank you. Our Chancellor, I feel like you are exactly the right person to be here at the right time. You have a vision of public higher education and the ability to move us toward realizing that vision, and for that I thank you. I have the pleasure of working here in the central office with, come on. With senior staff and the other staff here, and when we say we're from the central office and we're here to help, we actually mean it, you know, and we have a camaraderie that I think is very invaluable. Presidents and directors, the faculty members and the staff at our campuses work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to on the ground to really make public higher education happen, and for them I am totally grateful. I am most especially grateful to the staff of the Office of the Council at the institutions and to my staff here at the central office. what I try to do is have tried to do is to hire people who know a whole bunch more than I do, and let them run, and they have, and it has made my job incredibly much easier, and I am incredibly grateful to them. And because of all these people, I really feel that the students of Tennessee and the people of Tennessee are the better, and it's been a real honor and privilege. Thank you.
Well, it goes without being said, you will be missed, that's for sure. The next and final item on our agenda is the election of a board secretary, now that Chris has decided to abandon us. No. I call on Chancellor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. According to TBR policy, recommendations for hiring general counsel and board secretary must be approved by you, the board. You have before you a recommendation to promote Mary G. Moody from Associate General Counsel to General Counsel and Board Secretary effective December 30, 2012. You have had her resume, so I won't go into a lot of detail and repetition, but she has served as General Counsel and as Deputy Commissioner to the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance, and as General Counsel to the Tennessee Department of Transportation. She also has prior service in the Tennessee Attorney General's office as well as in private practice. Therefore, pending any questions that you may have, it's my recommendation that she be approved as General Counsel and appointed or elected to Board Secretary.
Members, you have heard the recommendation from Chancellor Morgan regarding Mary Moody. Is there a motion to move? There's a motion by Regent Freeman. Is there a second? Second by Regent Copeland to approve her promotion and hiring as General Counsel and Board Secretary. This is an item that requires, any discussion. I didn't want to have my hand slapped one final time by our General Counsel. Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Opposed is the same. Motion is approved. Announcements? Any announcements, Chancellor?
No, sir. Are you going to mention the reception upstairs?
Well, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
one of us need to.
Okay, yeah. There will be a reception immediately following the adjournment of this meeting upstairs in the boardroom for Chris, so you have a chance to come by and speak with her and say your good, not really goodbyes, but just so long for now kind of remarks. So please, all of you come.
Yes. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.